Tiny microbes, basically ancient germs, have been frozen in Arctic ice for tens of thousands of years, just chilling there, since woolly mammoths were still walking around. And now, scientists think these little guys might wake up again if Arctic summers keep getting longer and warmer. Yep, you heard right. Zombie microbes. Great. These microbes have been stuck in permafrost, which is soil and ice that stays frozen solid year-round. The top layer melts a bit in the summer, but the really old stuff, those Ice Age microbes, are buried way deeper. They only thaw if things get really warm for months, not just a hot day or two. To study these microbes, the team went down to the Permafrost Research Tunnel near Fairbanks in Alaska, a long underground hallway 50 feet below the surface, carved right into the ancient frozen ground. The tunnel stretches over 350 feet and lets scientists literally walk through thousands of years of frozen history. By the way, while checking out the walls, the researchers also spotted bones of mammoths and bison sticking out of the ice. One of the reasons why the researchers went to Alaska was to see how fast these ancient microbes could come back to life. Well, they were in for a surprise. These microbes don't need years, centuries, or magic spells to wake up. Just a couple of months of warm weather. Once they're awake, they start doing their microbe stuff, which includes pumping out greenhouse gases like CO2 and methane. And that's bad news, because those gases warm the planet even more. This melts more permafrost, which wakes up more microbes, which releases more gas. You get it. Basically, it's a nasty climate loop. Anyway, when scientists went down into the frozen tunnel to grab chunks of super old permafrost, the first thing they noticed was the awful smell. It wasn't just the stench of an old basement. It was something has been frozen for thousands of years and is finally waking up bad. Weirdly, microbiologists were happy. Such a smell is actually a good sign for them because it usually means tiny creatures, microbes, are still around. Back in the lab, the team soaked the frozen samples in the water that had a special kind of heavy hydrogen inside it. This helped them track what the microbes were doing later. Then they put the samples into fridges at 3 different temperatures: cold, kinda cold, and not too cold, to copy what future Arctic summers might feel like if the warming continues. For the first month, almost nothing happened. Even the warmer samples barely changed. Only a tiny number of microbes started waking up. Basically, a microscopic trickle of activity. But a few months later, things got more exciting. Thanks to the heavy water, scientists could watch how much of it the microbes used to build their cell membranes. It helped them figure out that the old microbes were making special fatty molecules that might help them stay alive in freezing conditions. By the 6-month mark, the samples that were stored at the warmer temperatures had transformed completely. They became more active and started forming little slime layers. The scientists could actually see these layers even without a microscope. The whole community of microbes wasn't super diverse, but those that were active behaved just like modern microbes that live in unfrozen soil today. In short, those ancient microbes were definitely alive and got pretty energetic once the temperatures were warm enough. This matters a lot for the Arctic and for the whole planet, because these microbes survive by eating old organic material trapped in the permafrost. When they eat, they release greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane, and the Arctic is warming faster than any other part of Earth. It means that the deep frozen layers might stay warm long enough for huge numbers of ancient microbes to wake up and start pumping out gas. Right now, northern permafrost holds about twice as much carbon as the entire atmosphere. If a lot of that carbon gets released, it could speed up the warming of our planet. It can lead to dramatic consequences, setting off a whole chain of huge changes and affecting basically everything on Earth. Extreme weather will start happening more often. Stronger hurricanes, heavier rainstorms, longer heat waves, bigger wildfires. The oceans will rise too, which can flood coastlines and put towns and cities at risk. Animals, plants, and entire ecosystems can get thrown out of balance, with some species struggling to survive and food chains breaking down. People all over the world will have to deal with crop failures, water shortages, and damaged homes or infrastructure. Let's get back to our zombie microbes. The thing is, the study only looked at them in one place in Alaska, but there's a massive amount of permafrost all over the world, in Alaska, Canada, Siberia, and many other places. And microbes in different regions might behave differently as things warm up. Scientists still have tons of work to do to figure out what's coming next. I bet you're questioning yourself. Could ancient viruses infect us? Well, most of the ancient microbes frozen in permafrost are totally harmless. They're like old bacteria that only care about messing with other tiny organisms in the dirt. But scientists worry that a few of these frozen germs might be the kind that can infect people, animals, or plants. And if that happened, our bodies probably wouldn't recognize them at all, because they've been frozen since mammoths existed. Basically, there's no immune system cheat codes for us. The risks of this happening grow for a number of reasons. For one thing, the Arctic is warming almost 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. Longer summers plus hotter temperatures mean more permafrost melting. So, more ancient stuff is waking up. Plus, people might start digging more around there. Companies will mine more, drill for oil, and ships can travel new routes. All this activity tears open ground that used to stay frozen solid. This increases the chance that someone or something comes across some ancient germ that just woke up. What would actually happen then? We might run into different zoonotic diseases, basically germs that jump from animals to humans. This already happened once. Thawed reindeer carcasses released anthrax, a rare and serious illness which then infected people and animals. Luckily, we do know how to treat anthrax. But what if something even older wakes up? Besides, our immune system might have zero defense. If a virus hasn't been around for tens of thousands of years, humans today would be like, what is that thing? No antibodies, no memories of it, nothing. But the scariest part is that we don't know what's hiding down there. Scientists think permafrost might be storing trillions of frozen microbes, many of which we've never seen before. Some might be boring, and some might be super dangerous. So what if one such virus finally thawed out? The world would be dealing with a disaster no one has ever seen before. This wouldn't look like a normal outbreak. It would feel more like something out of a horror movie. First, the virus would be totally new and our immune systems definitely wouldn't recognize it. That means the virus would spread crazy fast, jumping from person to person. No one would know what to expect. It could cause weird illnesses, sudden fevers, or even something way more dangerous. Stuff as scary as the diseases people faced in old times. Scientists digging in permafrost already look for traces of those ancient diseases, so it's not impossible. Once it escapes, the virus wouldn't stay local for long. With people traveling everywhere and companies rushing into the warming Arctic for mining and shipping, the infection could go from one small Arctic village to major cities all over the world within days. Hospitals would fill up instantly and doctors and nurses would run out of supplies. Businesses would shut down. Food supplies could crash if the virus hit farm animals or crops. Shipping and travel could freeze completely. Fear and panic would spread around the globe almost as fast as the virus itself. There'd be no vaccine and no cure, because no one has ever seen this virus before. Scientists would have to start from zero. In short, a zombie virus outbreak would be totally unpredictable, and the modern world is certainly not ready for it. The world's largest carbon storage is leaking, and it's getting worse. Look around. Passing cars, steel constructions, even your plastic phone case or a diamond ring. They all have something in common. If you still remember Chemistry 101, then you know the key staple, the periodic table. Out of all the elements there, one stands out, the king element, carbon. And not only is it vital for almost every industry, it's also crucial for our lives. And if somewhere on the planet it starts leaking, the changes for us are irreversible. Basically, it means that the standard air cycle is broken beyond repair. Sadly, it's exactly what's happening right now. And no, scientists are not sure why exactly it's happening, but there are theories. Now, if you think about it, you understand carbon is not something you order off Amazon. It has to be extracted first, and like many other crucial elements, say platinum or cobalt, it is stored in the world's biggest and most powerful bank, the African continent. Just like all banks, it has vaults. And the carbon vaults we're talking about are mostly located in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I don't just say Congo because there are actually two. The DRC with its capital Kinshasa, and the smaller Republic of the Congo with Brazzaville as its capital. We're focusing on the bigger one. The DRC hosts the world's largest net carbon sink in the Congo Basin, making it crucial for the global climate. But why, out of all countries and all continents, is it the DRC that has it all? Well, speaking in very general terms, there's one thing that's essential for the global carbon cycle to work: forest swamps. Forest swamps, or wooded wetlands, occupy roughly 2% of the world's land surface, which significantly narrows down the possible areas where carbon may be stored. Now, knowing what is important for carbon, think of one more place that might have perfect conditions for such basins. If you said Brazil, well done. This country also has vast rainforests and, logically, carbon basins. The DRC is home to the world's second largest rainforest, with approximately around 375 million acres of forest cover. That's roughly 60% of the entire Congo Basin forests, and about 67 to 68% of the country's total land area. The conclusion is straightforward. There's hardly a better place on the planet to act as a carbon vault. Now, when you hear all that, you might think, that's great, they have a lot of carbon. What could possibly go wrong? The answer, unfortunately, lies right under the surface. We all know what CO2 is, but it's not just something produced by cars, factories, or even when we exhale. It's a gas that can also form naturally and in large amounts if conditions shift even slightly. Imagine a leaking pipe. At first, it's just a drip. Then the leak widens and more water escapes. Eventually, you end up flooding the space below, or if you're lucky, just your own basement. Either way, it's expensive and difficult to control. Now scale that pipe up thousands of times, tens of thousands. That's closer to what's happening in the DRC. The carbon vault is leaking, and the consequences may not be reversible. The Amazon basin and the Congo basin have, for thousands of years, locked away vast amounts of carbon, quietly stabilizing Earth's climate. That was the assumption: stable, slow, predictable. But now that assumption is breaking. When I say carbon, don't think of coal or diamonds. Carbon exists in many forms: solid, compressed, crystalline, or powdery. But here we're talking about carbon dioxide, CO2, a gas. In the Congo Basin, two lakes, Lac Mai Ndombe and Lac Tumba, are changing how scientists understand carbon storage. These are blackwater lakes, meaning their waters are dark, as if someone poured freshly brewed black tea into them. The color comes from organic material from surrounding forests that is constantly washed into these lakes. They sit within vast peatlands where carbon has been building up and storing for thousands of years. Scientists believe this carbon was safely locked underwater in these so-called vaults. The prevailing assumption was that carbon would only be released under extreme conditions, such as severe drought. But even the strongest security systems have their flaws, and this natural vault is starting to give way. These blackwater lakes are already releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere under normal conditions. Now, however, the amount is becoming significantly larger. More importantly, up to 40% of that carbon is ancient, thousands of years old. This isn't just fresh plant decay. This is long-stored carbon escaping. The exact mechanism is still unclear. What scientists do know is that organic material from swamp forests flows continuously into these lakes. Along with it comes carbon from deeper peat layers, older, previously stable material. Once it reaches the water, it breaks down and is released into the air as CO2. Now, what is actually so problematic about this? After all, CO2 is naturally present in the atmosphere and does not directly disrupt everyday life. On the contrary, it is an essential component that helps shape the planet as we know it. Earth functions as a complex, self-regulating system. Lakes emit CO2, but in regions like the Congo Basin, dense rainforests help balance these emissions. That balance, however, only holds if conditions remain stable, and currently, they are not. This is not primarily about the obvious factors like deforestation and resulting CO2 imbalance. Those are significant, but they're not the focus here. Instead, attention shifts to broader environmental processes. It is now an established fact that the climate is changing, and it is changing rapidly. Observable differences. Warmer summers, milder winters, altered rainfall patterns are no longer theoretical. These shifts do not only affect human perception, they alter the behavior of entire ecosystems. At its core, this becomes a feedback loop. More CO2 due to industrialization leads to a warmer and drier climate. A warmer and drier climate reduces the ability of rainforests to buffer emissions. Reducing buffering leads to even more CO2 entering the atmosphere. While industrialization initiated much of this process, what is happening in the Congo Basin now is driven by natural responses to those altered conditions. As conditions become drier, peat soils begin to lose moisture. To make this more visual, imagine dry soil forming cracks. Once those cracks appear, external elements can penetrate deeper. Even if these cracks are not visible at the surface, drying soil becomes less dense. When that happens, oxygen can move further down into layers that were previously isolated. Deep within those layers live millions of microorganisms that evolved under low oxygen conditions. Introduce more oxygen and their activity increases. Organisms that were once limited become more active. They begin breaking down organic material that had been preserved for centuries or even millennia. This process releases additional carbon dioxide. At this stage, it's necessary to clarify something. These carbon leaks are not physical leaks of solid material like coal or diamonds. They are emissions of an invisible gas, invisible yet highly impactful. Similar to an industrial gas leak. It cannot be seen with the naked eye, but its effects are significant and far-reaching. It reshapes atmospheric composition and, over time, the climate itself. If the issue were limited to CO2, it would already be serious, but it doesn't end there. These lakes are also emitting methane, a greenhouse gas that is significantly more potent than CO2 over shorter timescales. Under normal conditions, methane emissions are partially controlled by microbes that consume it before it escapes into the atmosphere. However, this natural filtering process depends on stable, water-logged environments. When water levels drop, that filtration weakens. Drier conditions reduce microbial consumption of methane, allowing more of it to escape. As a result, both CO2 and methane emissions increase simultaneously. The overall system begins to shift. What was once a stable carbon sink starts moving toward instability. The process becomes self-reinforcing. Rising temperatures lead to drier conditions. Drier conditions accelerate decomposition. Increased decomposition releases more greenhouse gases. More greenhouse gases lead to further warming. Each step amplifies the next. As of now, the Congo Basin is still a carbon vault, and that remains critically important. But if this cycle continues unchecked, there is a clear risk of transition. Instead of absorbing carbon, the region could begin releasing it at scale.
According to the United Nations, India became the most populous country in the world in 2023. Can you guess where the United States of America stands in that rating? It's number 3. And America is the 4th largest country in terms of size. It takes up some 6% of Earth's landmass. Plenty of space for 335 million people who live there, right? No need to squeeze them into one region. Well, not quite. The population of the U.S. is distributed pretty unevenly. Let's draw a line right through the middle of the country. It'll run from North Dakota in the north to Texas in the south. Once you input census data and do some math, astounding figures appear. 80% of the U.S. population lives east of the imaginary line. The remaining 20% live to the west. That's just 1 in 5 Americans. We're talking about large metropolitan areas such as Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco. You don't believe me? Just look at a satellite map of the U.S. at night. The right part is shining pretty bright, right? But why? Why is there such a huge imbalance in population? Simply put, history and geography. The East Coast is the place where the U.S. became independent in 1776. These are the original 13 colonies. Soon enough, settlers started spreading westward. One important milestone was the Louisiana Purchase. Today, this region is mostly what we call the Midwest. The area aligns nicely with the Mississippi watershed. Yup, this means plenty of fertile soil ideal for agriculture. But does this automatically mean a spike in population? The demographics of the U.S. reveal that a majority of its citizens live either on the east or the west coast. This leaves a large patch of land in the middle of the country virtually empty. People know it as America's underpopulated belt. The area stretches from the Canadian border in the north to Mexico in the south. The total surface area of this strip of land is 350,000 square miles. That's twice the size of California. One massive piece of land. In fact, this narrow strip accounts for 12% of the contiguous United States. That's the U.S. without Alaska and Hawaii. The belt runs north to south through 7 states, but its population makes up only 1% of the total number of people living in the United States. Now, this doesn't mean that the area is completely empty. It's still home to just over 3 million people. That's roughly the population of the island country of Jamaica. But there is room here for many more residents. Let's take the example of Nigeria. Its total land area is slightly bigger than the sparsely inhabited belt in America. But Nigeria's population is a huge 206 million people. This makes it the 7th most populated country on the planet. Impressive, right? But why isn't the American Midwest living up to its potential? Well, time for one last history lesson. I've already mentioned how the United States expanded from the East Coast to the West Coast. This doesn't mean that the West was lagging too far behind. Take, for example, the cities of San Francisco and Los Angeles. They were incorporated in 1850. That's just 13 years after Chicago. The following year, Portland, Oregon became incorporated. You get the picture. And then, in 1869, the United States completed building its first transcontinental railroad. In terms of transport, the country was unified. There is no historical reason strong enough to explain why so few people live in the center of the country. So now it's time for some interesting geography. If you look at the physical map of the United States, you'll notice that this belt lies in the Great Plains. As the name suggests, the area is flat, which should be ideal for large settlements. Well, not really. East of this region, there is a huge patch of the color brown. It's covered by mountains. But not just any mountains. These are the Rockies. The range is around 76 million years old. It has several peaks over 14,000 feet. And most of the Rockies are national parks, a vast nature reserve. But most importantly, the range plays a vital role in the region's climate. Ever heard of the rain shadow effect? Let me explain. Wet weather systems form over the Pacific Ocean. Then they travel east, where they meet the Rockies. Now the air has to go up over the mountains. This is where it cools down and condenses. The final result? A lot of rain and snow for the people living on or west of the range. And just a few drops east of it. When air from the Pacific finally reaches the Great Plains, it doesn't contain much moisture anymore. In fact, the weather system starts taking up moisture from the surrounding landscape. This creates an arid climate east of the Rocky Mountains. That's the exact location of the belt where so few Americans live. It's one of the driest parts of the country. So when settlers came in the 19th century, they were like, nah, I'll just continue west. Plus, there was the gold rush in California they were heading for. The climate in this part of the plains isn't great for agriculture, and huge fluctuations in air temperature don't help either. In a single day, temperatures can drop from 70 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. These sudden changes in outside temperature are harmful to human health. It's like stepping inside an air-conditioned room on a sizzling summer day. Not a pleasant feeling. Southern California has a similarly dry climate, yet close to 40 million people live there. This makes California the most populous U.S. state. Their secret? A vast network of irrigation canals and aqueducts, plus a share of water from the Colorado River. Summers in the Great Plains get very hot, while winters are extremely cold. The reason behind these wild weather patterns are polar winds. They get a piggyback ride along the ridges of the Rockies and then rapidly descend into the plains. A winter day in Wyoming, for example, can start pleasantly warm, but later in the afternoon, the temperature can easily drop below zero. You just wouldn't know how to dress, and you probably wouldn't want to relocate here. That's what 99% of Americans think too. Humans like to feel comfortable, so we choose to live in temperate climate zones. Places that are either too cold or too hot don't have a large population. Just look at the driest inhabited continent. You've guessed it correctly, it's Australia. Nearly 70% of the country is either arid or semi-arid. That's a subtle way of saying that it's a desert. That's why Australians are huddled in coastal areas. 90% of them live in big cities, such as Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. The only exception is the capital, Canberra. They build it inland close to a water source. But Australia's interior is sparsely populated. Just like in the States, there is only one major town in an area the size of 12 Lake Michigans. A huge shout-out to the residents of Alice Springs. They truly live in an oasis. And what about places with a temperate climate, like Europe? The population is evenly distributed here, right? Well, yes and no, depending on the country. In Germany, 77% of people live in urban areas. They have plenty of major cities to choose from. Berlin, Hamburg, Munich, and Cologne all have over 1 million residents. But let's look at neighboring France. How many cities with a population over 1 million can you name? Okay, Paris, definitely. It has over 12 million residents in the metropolitan area. But now comes the staggering fact. The next two cities on the list have a population of barely 2 million, respectively. Can you notice the huge imbalance? This is the case in most large European countries. In Greece, for example, 35% of the population lives in the capital, Athens. So, the largely underpopulated center of the United States is not a unique example. America is the land of opportunities, but chances of finding a better life are greater in large cities. The country's top 100 metropolitan areas account for at least 3/4 of the nation's GDP, and most of them are located on the east and the west coasts. There are no cities with over 1 million residents in America's underpopulated belt.
Mexico is huge and one of the most populated countries in the world. Over 128 million people live there. But why did more than half of them decide to pack up in this tiny strip? This area in the center of the country makes up only 18% of Mexico, and the locals have been living there for centuries. All because it seems to be the only livable place in the country. To the north, there are hot, dry deserts. Let's face it, it may be pretty hard to survive in such climatic conditions. To the south, there are jungles, and those are nightmarish. Jungles are warm and wet, so they might trick you into thinking that they'll be a cozy home for you. But it's very hard to build anything in them. The concrete won't dry because of awful unstoppable rains, and the heat messes up asphalt roads. This is why there are only 8 paved roads through the southern jungles connecting Mexico to Central America. Roads are crucial for proper life. More roads mean better and cheaper transportation, which helps people trade, do business, and make more money. But jungles have even bigger problems than just a lack of roads. Farming. Most of the nutrients in the jungle are in the plants, old wood, and decaying leaves. When these things decay, they become McDonald's-level meals for insects, fungi, and bacteria. They immediately start recycling the nutrients so fast that almost none reach the soil. With no nutrients, the soil becomes barren and useless. Oh, and we still need to clear the jungles from time to time, otherwise they may become impossible to get through. People do that by using slash and burn methods. Because of this, they often end up with poor soil that needs lots of fertilizers to grow crops. And don't forget about the ever-present jungle pests. These guys pounce on the crops, and no amount of pesticides can get rid of them forever. To make matters even worse, nearly 70% of Mexico is located in the mountains. It's one of the most mountainous countries in the world, similar to Switzerland. And mountains, just like rain, do everything in their power to prevent humanity from thriving. Building infrastructure there is nearly impossible. It requires tons of money and labor compared to flatlands. And they also make transportation between these valleys and to the coast much more challenging. Now, imagine mountains combined with the jungles. Exactly. But hold on a minute. Isn't the central strip of Mexico filled with the highest mountains in the country? This area is packed with plateaus and valleys and sits at elevations of 7,000 feet or more. This is as high as a ski resort in Aspen, Colorado. Then why in the world does everyone still live here? Turns out, these are actually good mountains. Since they're so high, they block the hotness of the desert and the tropical zones. This way, they create cooler, drier, and more temperate climates. The soil here is super fertile and great for farming, all because of the plot twist. Many of the surrounding mountains are actually volcanoes. Volcanoes, while scary, can also be super useful. They've been erupting for millions of years, and when they do that, they mix rich minerals into the soil. They're like natural fertilizer. So the land here is perfect for growing crops, especially calorie-heavy grains like corn. That's why we get so much corn or maize from Mexico. Also, many volcanic areas have natural hot springs where people can relax and enjoy a warm soak. Finally, mountains help reduce the spread of viruses and insects. This is one of the reasons why Mesoamerica became one of the first cradles of civilization in history. Thousands of years ago, the ancient city of Teotihuacan thrived here. This city reached a population of at least 125,000 people, bigger than Monaco or Liechtenstein. It was one of the largest cities in the world at the time. Back in the days of the Aztec Empire, this area was home to 5 large lakes and many rivers that provided tons of fresh water for farming. Also, people used boats to transport goods. This boosted trading and cultural growth. But living in the mountains still isn't perfect. Only about 12% of Mexico's land is good for farming, so mostly people farm in the central volcanic valleys, where they've lived for centuries. Also, because the elevation is so high, the rivers flow from the mountains to the ocean. Gravity plays its tricks, and the currents accelerate and become stronger. Because of this, there's no cheap river transport between Mexico City and the ocean. The rivers are too dangerous for the ships. Instead, people have to rely on more expensive methods like roads, railways, and airplanes. Veracruz used to be the local star port. It was the only safe and calm place on the Gulf of Mexico. Since it was the only natural harbor for miles along Mexico's flat coastline, it was super important. Not only for locals, but also a hot target for invaders. And while mountains could keep Mexico's heartland kinda safe, protecting coastal areas was harder because of them. Connecting Veracruz to Mexico City was a massive headache. And don't forget that living near volcanoes is still scary. Every now and then they throw temper tantrums and start spewing lava, ash, and smoke everywhere. This is extremely dangerous, so locals have to evacuate to keep everyone safe. One famous volcanic event happened in 1943 with the Paricutin volcano. Imagine a farmer's surprise when a volcano suddenly erupted right in his cornfield. The volcano grew rapidly and buried 2 villages in lava and ash. Most people managed to evacuate in time, but not all of them. Another dramatic event was the eruption of El Chichon in 1982. This eruption was a big surprise and caused a lot of destruction. Finally, there's Popocatépetl volcano. In the Aztec language, this means smoking mountain. People affectionately call it El Popo. This volcano is still active and quite close to Mexico City. El Popo frequently lets off steam and ash, reminding everyone that it's very much alive. And living near El Popo means always being prepared that something might happen. Also, the reason why volcanoes are there is because the local tectonic plates are pretty active. The ground likes to move, which means that earthquakes aren't a rare occasion here either. Well, at least the climate on the Central Strip is nice, so modern construction materials like concrete and asphalt thrive here. Finally, we can build some roads, right? Oops, never mind. Because of the elevation, the locals only managed to build the first railroad in the 19th century. Meanwhile, the US had already built over 50,000 miles of tracks at the time. Can you imagine? Since Mexico is like a jigsaw puzzle of separate valleys, it's very tricky to build roads and railways through the mountains. Basically, there are no cheap ways to move goods in the country. But a few cities found a way to thrive outside the Central Strip. Chihuahua is one of the largest cities in Mexico, and it's doing pretty well. They boast good automotive and electronics industries. That's probably because it's connected to the US border, which really helps trading. Hermosillo is also located in the desert, but luckily it's right near the Gulf of California, so the temperatures aren't that awful. Plus, it helps marine trading. In this city, they even made up some advanced irrigation techniques that make the desert bloom. Also, Hermosillo is a major center for the aerospace industry. However, Mexico City still remains the life center in the country, and it's one of the world's largest megacities, with over 22 million people. But it's hard for the central government in Mexico City to control this puzzle of a country. Trading between the central valleys and the northern deserts or southern jungles is very tough, and supporting the economy may be sort of frustrating.
Why is Australia so strangely empty? Why haven't we discovered so much of the ocean? Is our planet a perfect sphere? And was the Earth once more purple than green? I bet you didn't know these facts about our planet, so let's find it all out. Australia is really massive. To make it easy to understand its size, it's nearly as large as the entirety of Europe. Home to around 26 million people, Australia is among the countries with the least population per area. It's ranked only 55th for the highest population in the world, while it has the 6th largest land area. Why is so much of it empty? A good guess would be the many dangerous animals hiding behind every rock. At least this is enough for me to avoid Australia. But there's one specific reason to explain this. The dryness of Australia ensures that 85% of the population lives within 30 miles of the coast, and 80% of them live along the eastern side, where rainfall is more common. But although there is an overall lack of rainfall, only 20% of Australia is unlivable desert, and only 40% is considered not habitable by human standards. The water consumption is actually higher than their average rainfall each year. But there is a further ancient water source hidden way below, which can support a much larger population. It's one of the largest underground freshwater resources in the world, the Great Artesian Basin. It covers a staggering 656,000 square miles, which is 1/5 the size of Australia. It holds enough water to cover the Earth under a 1.5 feet deep layer of water. Or, more usefully, it could provide enough water for thirsty Australians over the next 1,500 years. Only 6.5% of Australia has soil suitable for farming, so this doesn't seem like a huge amount. But in case you forgot, Australia is big, and this small percentage is about the size of France. With this massive area available for farming, Australia has more than enough to feed its population, with a further 70% of agriculture products that are exported overseas. So, with plenty of land, food, and water, why are the population figures so low? A very slow migration process is the reason. First, only people from the United Kingdom lived there. Then, they opened their borders to other Europeans,
and this restriction remained in place until 1973. You would think almost 200 years would be enough time for a lot of people to migrate, but Australia was just so far away. The risk of traveling such a long way and the cost of the journey meant that people from Europe prefer the shorter and cheaper options to migrate elsewhere, like Canada or the USA. For the past 2,000 years, people have understood that Earth is round. But did you know that it's not a perfect sphere? Through the wobbly rotation of Earth, our planet constantly changes its size, very slowly of course. The North and South poles are surprisingly flat. Earth is pretty much like a ball being squished. Imagine there's a giant hand with the fingers pressing at both poles. Because of this pressure, the equator pushes a little outwards. Along with an uneven gravitational field, Earth has loads of gravity glitches, some positive and others negative, creating an uneven, rocky, and bumpy surface. Some places on Earth have more gravity than others. If you weighed yourself along the equator, you would weigh 0.5% less than at the poles. Not a whole lot, and definitely not worth the trip to change your weight. If you were to measure the length from the center of the Earth towards the furthest point of Earth, you would be shocked that Mount Everest isn't at the end of it. Instead, it's along the equator, which is the pushed out part. Ecuador's mountain Chimborazo would actually be the tallest point on Earth, as it's the furthest from the center. We still have around 80% of the ocean to map, which is crazy considering how much of the solar system we've explored in comparison. But we're still aware of many of the unbelievable details about the ocean. It covers over 80% of the world's surface, where 94% of the Earth's wildlife lives. And from some of the life in it, up to 80% of the world's oxygen is produced mainly from plankton, algae, and bacteria. One of the most famous, already mapped places is the Mariana Trench. It's the deepest point on Earth, as low as almost 7 miles deep. That's a huge, 5 times the length of the Grand Canyon, and deeper than Mount Everest is tall. It's also home to one of the most ancient seabeds on Earth, casually laying low for about 180 million years. The pressure at the bottom is over 1,000 bars, but although this is 1,000 times more than normal pressure, life still flourishes here. Throughout the ocean, there is an estimated over 3 million shipwrecks lying in the murky depths. Countless artifacts sit there untouched, and there could be more than all the world's museums. The mid-ocean ridge is the longest in the world, reaching 40,000 miles. That's almost 10 times the size of the Andes, the longest mountain range on land. The sun is the reason behind the blue and aqua colors of the ocean. This color isn't from the reflection of the sky, though they are both blue for the same reason. The surface of our planet receives white light from the sun, and it absorbs the orange, red, and yellow light stronger. It doesn't absorb the blue light so much, so it returns to how we see it. Of course, this only occurs based on how pure the water is. If the water is full of mud or algae, they scatter the light and overpower the water's natural blueness. There are many factors that determine what color we see on our planet. Could you believe that the Earth was green before? Instead, it was purple. Chlorophyll in our atmosphere absorbs mainly blue and red wavelengths from the sun and reflects the green ones to what we see our planet as today. Long ago, ancient microbes called retinal dominated the Earth instead of chlorophyll. They absorbed green light and reflected red and violet light. Those microbes had a simpler structure, so they were easier to produce in the low oxygen environment of the early Earth. They provided our planet with a purplish color instead of green. But chlorophyll is more efficient, and as the Earth was developing, it eventually took over. Imagine that billions of years ago, faraway observers could see our home as a small purple dot. I wonder if we could have also been purple. Probably not. The biggest tree on Earth is a giant sequoia named General Sherman. It stands over 280 feet, almost reaching the height of a 26-story building. They believe it to be 2,700 years old, with a circumference of 1,000 inches. Its weight is a staggering 1,800 tons. That's heavy, but it isn't the heaviest living thing on Earth. In Utah, a huge grove of trees called pando works like a single colony of trees. The massive root system connects all of them together with up to 47,000 stems. It weighs up to 6,000 tons and is 80,000 years old. It makes it the oldest living thing known to humans. Now, what about the biggest area of one being? Off the coast of Western Australia, a seaweed grows to an unthinkable size. The Poseidon's ribbon weed has been growing for 4,500 years, spreading underground clone shoots. It's all connected and shares the same DNA with most of its shoots. It covers a massive 77 square miles, the same size as 28,000 soccer fields, or the size of Nebraska. And it won't stop there either, as it continues to grow by 2 feet each year. It's hard to even picture the scale of these enormous beings. Now, just imagine if they were all purple.
Okay, here's a quick pop quiz on geography and touristy stuff. What's the biggest city in Italy? Did you say Rome? Then you got it right. Rome has a population of over 2 million people. And what would you say is the current population of Venice? Well, that's a tricky one to know by heart. But to answer correctly, in 2022, it was a little over 258,000 people. Now, what if I told you that for 80% of them, the Venice they live in isn't the tourist and historical one with all the canals? It's rather the other side of town. If you know someone who's traveled to Venice before, they may have sent you a postcard with an image of a gondola in a canal. I bet you never imagined that Venice could also just look like this, just a regular old Italian city. As tourists, we have a strong misconception about what Venice is. We think the real Venice is what we see in the movies. Well, I hate to be the one to pop your illusion, but there's more to Venice than straight canals and old bridges. Here are the boundaries of the real Venice. Probably the postcards you get only picture this bit of the city called Centro Storico, or Historical Center. But the city also includes the mainland, called Terra Firma, where most Venetians live today. The interesting thing to look at is how the number of people living in the historical center has decreased over the years. From then on, the number started to reduce more with each passing year. Today, only 50,000 people can afford to live there. To understand that, let's travel back in time for a moment. Before Venice became an important Italian city, it was nothing but a fisherman's village. It was only around the 5th century that people decided to take a chance and build on the marshy ground of the Venetian islands. If you've ever wondered how Venice holds up, let's just say it's due to strong blocks of wood driven deep into the ground. As it turns out, you need oxygen and water to ruin wood, and in marshy soils, there isn't much oxygen, so the buildings were safe. It was during the Middle Ages that Venice became one of the world's most important maritime empires. You might remember that's where Marco Polo, the famous merchant and explorer, came from. The city was extremely well located, right in the Adriatic Sea, and had access to huge commercial empires of the time, like the city of Constantinople. At that time, the most prestigious jobs you can get were like the ones Marco Polo had, anything related to long-distance trading. Since then, Venice consists of 118 islands, and some say there are around 400 bridges in the city. Quick question here. Can you name at least 2 of the most famous Venetian islands? Let's start with Burano. The island of Burano is famous for its lace making and its super colorful landscape. FYI, Burano is also home to a less famous leaning tower than the one in Pisa. It's called the Tower of Burano. And then there's the island of Murano. They are famous for their products of fine glass. You can find anything from huge vases to water glasses, jewelry, and so on. They're quite exquisite, but also super expensive. But you know what they say, time changes everything. In the 20th century, Venice was no longer the trading hub it once was. Its economic power was failing seriously, so the city decided to invest in something else, its historical value. And the best way they found how to do that was through preservation. Let's face it, if you're a tourist who enjoys history, you would jump at the opportunity of visiting a UNESCO heritage site, wouldn't you? Initially, this was rather good for the city. But the thing is, as tourism in Venice skyrocketed, the old dynamics of the city started to change to keep up with the intense tourism. Truth is, in our day and age, lots of tourists rather buy small and cheap souvenirs than invest their money in expensive manufactured goods, such as the classic Murano glasses. The traditional Venetian stores that were open hundreds of years ago just didn't have the economic power to compete with new stores that opened to cater specifically for tourists. And then, what happened next is something we often call falling down the rabbit hole. Because, as it turned out, tourists attracted more tourists, and Venice lost control over it. The maximum sustainable number of tourists in Venice would be around 22,500 people per day. But in 2021, Venice saw up to 80,000 tourists per day in certain parts of the year. If you remember that there are only 50,000 people living in Venice's historical center nowadays, that almost means that tourists outnumber locals by 2 to 1. This is what gave Venice one of its current nicknames amongst the locals, which is a short-term city. I mean, if you live in a touristy city such as New York City or Paris, you'd be sure to avoid the parts of the city that are more touristy. But in Venice, that's difficult, since we're talking about several small islands. Whether you want it or not, the city is constantly packed. Locals started to complain that things such as getting a table at a restaurant or crossing an important square, such as Piazza San Marco, would take hours. Not to mention that instead of normal car traffic, well, in Venice, you can experience some gondola traffic. But that's not even the worst that's been happening. As the number of tourists per year started to rise exponentially, so did the infrastructure to accommodate all these people. When landlords understood that they could make more money off of tourists than they could with locals, overall prices started to soar. That's why, from the 1950s onward, fewer Venetians were able to continue living in the city's historical center. Landlords decided to more than double the prices of housing. So, a family that paid around 800 euros for their apartment now had to pay something around 1,500 euros to stay in the same place. And social services couldn't even do anything about it because there were so many similar cases happening all over the historical center. This may sound like something small, but when you stop to look at the big picture, it's changing the social fabric of the city. Yep, that's what usually happens in super touristy places. France is having to deal with a similar problem of overtourism. France's Ministry of Tourism has concluded that tourists are spending less money, yet overexploiting the classic tourist landmarks. Cities are made up of much more than just buildings and infrastructure. As urban sociologist Georg Simmel said, cities need to be heterogeneous, and by raising the prices of rent so much, the first ones to be kicked out of the city were the younger generations. After that, only well-established elderly people could afford to stay in the city center. Things started getting so out of hand in Venice's historical center that UNESCO itself threatened to put the city on its list of heritage sites in danger of severe damage. That's tough, huh? The city is still trying to find ways to mitigate the effects of tourism. The first thing they did was to ban those huge cruise ships from stopping in the city's historical area. Oh, and the city produced a tourism fee. Normally, anyone sleeping in the historical center already pays a fee. But nowadays, tourists have to register their entry and pay a daily fee for exploring the main island. The profits from this fee are directed toward making life in Venice's city center more affordable. Hopefully these policies will allow Venetians to move back to Venice's city center. Ciao!
The Amazon River, the boat, and dense jungle on both sides. All is silent. Only the engine is revving, and you look around nervously under the earnest gaze of the Peruvian guide. Suddenly, the man smiles and points ahead. This is it. You've finally arrived at Iquitos. The city is hidden deep within the Amazon rainforest. On one side, Iquitos is surrounded by water, and on the other lies thick, impenetrable rainforest as far as the eye can see, making this city extremely difficult to reach. First, you had to fly to Peru's capital, Lima, a vibrant coastal city. From there, you traveled by bus through Peru's vast jagged mountains before being plunged into the heart of the Amazon rainforest. 3 days into this bus journey, you reached a small town where the road suddenly stopped. At over 140 square miles, Iquitos is the largest continental city in the world that cannot be reached by road.
You're still over 200 miles away from Iquitos, so from here you take a boat ride along the hot, humid Amazon River before finally reaching the remote city 5 days after you left Lima. When you arrive in the city, you notice many of the houses are built on tall stilts. This is because, in the springtime, the river surrounding Iquitos swells up, submerging parts of the city in water. For this, Iquitos has been nicknamed the Venice of the Amazon. The stilted houses are tall enough to avoid the murky waters of the Amazon River. You hear loud buzzing coming from all around the city. It sounds like a gang of bikers have arrived. In reality, these are motocarrios. There are very few cars in Iquitos. Instead, they have motorcycles with small passenger cabins attached to them. There are around 45,000 of these things whizzing around Iquitos, making the city very noisy. Your trip to the most isolated places has just begun. So, you head to Norway and arrive in the capital city Oslo. Immediately, you hop on another plane. After a 3-hour flight, you land at the world's northernmost public airport, Longyearbyen. You step off the plane to see a small and colorful town enclosed by snow-topped mountains. There's no settlement further to the north than this. Longyearbyen translates to the Long Year Town, named after its American founder, coal miner John Longyear. You take a walk along the coast of the small town. The water is a beautiful crystal blue. You decide to dip your toe in to test it out. Ow! Bad idea. The average temperature of the water here is 32 degrees, making it ice cold. In the distance, you can make out a fuzzy white creature. It's a polar bear. In fact, it's a group of them. In Longyearbyen, polar bears famously outnumber humans. Around 3,000 of these animals populate the area compared to the human population of 2,300. Finally, the sun sets. You grab a blanket and sit back to take in the stunning view of the northern lights. Now, imagine you're walking in the scorching heat across Egypt's Great Sand Sea. You've been walking for miles, hours, days even, dreaming of water, greenery, and a place to rest, when suddenly you come across a small settlement with olive groves, palm trees, and even freshwater springs. This isn't a heat-induced mirage. It's the Siwa Oasis, an Egyptian city of 23,000 people and a miracle of nature. You travel here by flying to Egypt's capital, Cairo, and then embarking on a lengthy and desolate bus ride across the desert. When you finally spot some greenery amongst the sand, you have reached the Siwa Oasis. After refreshing yourself in the cool waters of the springs, you explore the city further and come across ancient ruins. This city has existed since 10,000 BCE, and many historical remnants can still be found there today. Amongst these ruins, you notice there are newer buildings. These are where the modern-day Siwi people live. You spend some time with the Siwi, a friendly and unique community of Egyptians. They tell you all about their city. The Siwa Oasis is located in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and due to its harsh climate, it's one of the most remote cities in the world. You notice how dry the air is and how scorching the sun feels. Reaching highs of 118 degrees Fahrenheit, this heat makes the Siwa Oasis a difficult place to live. It's time to travel to a more balanced climate. You head northeast and arrive in Russia's capital, Moscow. From there, you take a flight east again, traveling further and further across Russia until you're closer to Alaska than to Moscow. You've reached the city of Petropavlovsk, which translates to City of Peter and Paul. The first thing you see are giant mountains surrounding the city, cutting it off from the rest of the world. These mountains are in fact volcanoes. In this far eastern part of Russia, there are more than 300 volcanoes, including 29 active ones. These volcanoes stop any roads from reaching Petropavlovsk. The city depends on flights and boats to import supplies. You turn away from the volcanoes to stare out at the blue, shimmering ocean. The water looks nice, so you head down to the beach where a crowd of sea lions are sunbathing along the sand. Petropavlovsk is home to incredibly diverse wildlife. Just off the shore, you can see a whale fin poking out of the water. You explore the city's diverse landscape. You go to one of the city's ski resorts and spend the day on the slopes. Then you hike up a rocky path to the base of one of the city's many volcanoes. Finally, it's time to relax on a boat tour around the island to see the city's famous Three Brothers rock formation. Feeling inspired, you travel to another volcanic land, Chile's Easter Island. The island doesn't have a harbor and only one airline flies to the remote land, So you travel an entire day to Santiago, Chile. Then you climb aboard a small plane to fly to Easter Island. You walk among the high cliffs of the barren island and come across its famous monuments. These are giant, mysterious statues of human heads. They're called Moai and were carved by the local people around 800 years ago. You inspect the earth beneath your feet. It looks and feels very dry. Easter Island consists of 3 ancient volcanoes. The volcanic soil makes it very difficult to grow crops or vegetation. Some of the city's trees were cleared hundreds of years ago to make way for the stone monuments, giving the island the empty look it has today. You embark on a boat ride 1,100 miles west from Easter Island. You reach a small green land floating in the Pacific Ocean. This is Pitcairn Island. You might recall that this place played a major role in the mutiny on the Bounty. You come down from the boat and begin your journey to reach Adamstown, the center of the island where its 43 inhabitants live. To reach Adamstown, you hike the Hill of Difficulty, a steep and rocky 200-foot climb to the top of the island. Now that you've finally made it here, you can explore the diverse and unique nature of the land. Pitcairn Island is home to the largest marine reserve in the world. You take a snorkeling trip and swim alongside all kinds of exotic fish. You explore vibrant coral reefs and even catch sight of a rare humpback whale. Dreaming of the great days of the old Wild West, you decide to travel to Supai, Arizona. To get to this Native American settlement and fragment of the past, you drive along America's famous Route 66. You stop, seemingly in the middle of nowhere with only desert land as far as the eye can see. Then you follow an 8-mile walking trail to reach Supai. You hike down into the Grand Canyon, almost 3,000 feet deep. You come across a stunning waterfall spilling over the cliffs of the canyon. This is Havasu Falls, a popular tourist spot famous for its vivid blue-green water. After a further mile's hike, you finally reach Supai. Over 200 members of the Havasupai Indian tribe reside in the small town. It's often referred to as the most remote town in the United States. To your left, you see several mules making their way across town with packages on their backs. Because no roads lead to this small settlement, mail is delivered by a mule train. Without it, it would take the average mail carrier a 16-hour hike to complete this route. You walk around the area and come across many more towering blue waterfalls. The untouched nature and great views of the Grand Canyon make the long hike worthwhile. After a beautiful sunset, nighttime falls, and there are no lights for miles. The land is lit up by the countless stars shining overhead. Giant waves come crashing down on the soft, sandy beaches of Hawaii. You've washed ashore, covered in seaweed, and a starfish sucking on your back. You get up and lean sideways to get all that water out of your ears, squinting your eyes in the bright sunshine. Wow, that was a swim! Ah, Hawaii, you finally made it to the Aloha State. You're expecting to see a flock of people gathered around with cameras, snapping photos of you washed up ashore. The large results with families and tourists. The international breakfast buffets. Sign me up. The pineapple pizzas sizzling from the oven. Say what you want about pineapple pizzas, but I'm open-minded. You look around and see acres of plain beaches with not a single person taking selfies. There aren't any resorts or even buildings for that matter. No paved roads, no infrastructure, and not even an airport. Something's off. You definitely jumped off the cruise ship to swim all the way to Hawaii, but this just seems like a virgin island. You walk along the beach, shaking off all that seaweed, trying to make your way to what seems like a main road. But there isn't one. You turn around and see a local man cycling towards you. Finally, some help. You approach him, and he greets you with a thick Hawaiian accent. The locals do speak English pretty well, so this guy is probably someone who keeps to himself. He gives you a very warm welcome and tells you that you're actually in Niihau Island, the smallest of the populated Hawaiian islands, at only 70 square miles. Your eyes widen with shock. Well, at least, you're still in Hawaii, technically. In 1863, King Kamehameha IV sold this island to Elizabeth Sinclair, a Scottish farmer who owned plantations in New Zealand, for a sum of $10,000 worth of gold. In today's money, that would be around $200,000. The king asked for one condition: to preserve the culture and protect it from any outsiders. Over the generations, the island has been maintaining that promise and is owned by the Robinson brothers, who are descendants of Elizabeth Sinclair. And one of the ways of getting in is by having a personal invitation from one of them. Another way is by booking a half-day helicopter trip with limited access around certain areas of the island for a few $100s. Good thing you saved yourself a few bucks. This is the only island where the majority of the population speak Hawaiian instead of English. In fact, Hawaii is the only state that has two official languages, English and Hawaiian. The Niihau Island actually rejects the fruits of today's advancements. There are no cars in sight, since the locals get around on foot or by bicycles. No wonder their legs have great definition. They thrive without running water, internet, or shops. The only school on the entire island is powered by solar energy with a backup generator. And what's awesome is that it's the only school in the state that's powered by the sun. You walk around enjoying the landscape until your new friend shows you the biggest lake in all Hawaii. You're in awe to witness such an amazing sight. Being a resident of the island, the local explains some ground rules the permanent residents must abide by. The men of the island are not allowed to grow their hair or have earrings. If they do break these rules, they can be evicted. The local takes you to a spot where many of them chill and hang out during the day when they're not working. Many families gather around and have a cookout. You lie down on a soft, sandy spot with no one causing a ruckus. The cool breeze brushes across your face. You see tiny hermit crabs crawling around. And in the distance, you see some fishers walking back to their houses with their much-needed catch. Residents don't use modern-day technologies for hunting and fishing. Rather, they use techniques passed down generation to generation. In 2010, a study showed that there are only around 170 official permanent residents on the island. Some other studies say there are even fewer people living there, just 70. Either way, you kick back, relax, and enjoy the peace and quiet. There are some other interesting and off-limits islands in the world too. Way over in Brazil is an island that's uninhabited on purpose. Every 10 square feet of it have at least 5 venomous snakes slithering around. Even though some scientists say it's an exaggeration, I wouldn't want to be in an island overtaken by snakes. And that's why Ilha Queimada Grande is known as Snake Island. Scientists claim there are around 2,000 to 4,000 snakes roaming around. If you have a phobia of these reptiles, then maybe consider scratching it off your bucket list. But don't worry, no one's even allowed here without a special permit. And if you live nearby, no need to fear. The island is around 90 miles off the coast of Sao Paulo, where it rightfully belongs. It's crazy to think that 90% of all snake bites in Brazil are from this island alone. And it's home to a unique species of pit vipers, the golden lancehead. The ecosystem on that island is so unique because the snakes dominate the entire land with no threat. Over the years, they've been preying on birds settling or paying a visit. And without human intervention, they were able to thrive and host snake parties all year round. Nestled between the Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea is a hostile island that doesn't have any venomous snakes, or at least none that we know of. In fact, we know pretty much nothing about this island, except that the people who occupy it don't welcome visitors, and history shows that anyone who enters doesn't come back. Dating all the way back to the 1800s, an Indian merchant ship landed on Sentinel Island to freshen up and find its bearings. Around 100 people were able to swim ashore, since the island had no dock for ships and boats. They stayed for 3 days before the Sentinelese decided it was time for them to leave. They weren't shy about it either and forced them to check out early, leaving a sour taste on both sides. And it's been like that ever since. People come near, the Sentinelese pull out the "not welcome" sign, and everyone gets hurt in the end. But some anthropologists were kind of successful studying their ways of life. One of the closest documented visits to a Sentinelese village in 1967 proved successful. They learned that the locals lived in huts with slanted roofs facing each other with a fire pit around them. They had small, narrow canoes to do some fishing near the shores. Their main dishes consisted of fish and crabs, and based on the Andamanese people in the neighboring Friendly Islands, we can determine they live off specific fruits and eggs from seagulls and turtles. They use primitive tools for fishing and hunting, and don't know pretty much anything else about the outside world and its advancements. So, it's probably best for everyone if we just left them alone. On the complete opposite of tropical islands and white sandy beaches is a scientist's dream. Imagine bearing witness to the birth of a new island. Now, I'm not talking about discovering one, or even water levels reducing where a new land emerges. No, no, no. Surtsey is an island just 20 miles off the coast of Iceland and is one of the most unique ones. In 1963, a volcanic eruption kept spewing out lava until an entire new island was formed, and it only took 3 years for it to form a whole square mile of land. Not enough to host a full-blown party, but enough to be considered an island. And after the lava cooled down, many scientists went to pay it a visit to conduct some studies. They were shocked to see actual life thriving there. It started with molds, bacteria, and specific fungi. Throughout the years, the ocean currents washed in seeds for plants to grow. And in the following decades, scientists observed more than 50 different species of birds flying around and populating the island. Surtsey is completely off-limits to anyone wanting to visit. Whether you're sailing by or going for a quick visit nearby, no one is allowed in to ensure the confinement of the species living there. It's even forbidden to construct anything nearby. So, why not visit Reykjavik? Way better restaurants. Friendlier, too.
There's one beautiful mountain in the southern part of Tibet called Kailash. Its height is about 22,000 feet. This is not so high and much less than Mount Everest. But unlike Everest, almost no one has ever climbed Kailash for one unusual reason. In 1926, one famous British climber decided to get to the mountain's top and studied it for a long time. The Mountaineering Association informed him that the mountain was completely inaccessible. Despite this, he continued trying. While exploring its northern part, it started snowing at that moment. It was impossible to work in such conditions, so he gave up this idea and left. The next attempt to climb to the top of Kailash was made by another climber, Colonel Wilson. Together with his companion, they figured out the most suitable passage to the top. They were confident they would achieve their goal, but the harsh winter ruined their plan. The colonel wanted to come back again, but he never did. Another person who wanted to climb to the top was an Australian writer and climber. He explored the territory of the Tibetan mountains and saw Kailash. At that moment, he thought he would easily reach the peak. He met one local lama and asked him if it was possible to climb Kailash. Lama replied that only an innocent person, free from any sin, can get there. And this person didn't even need to climb the icy walls, as he would be able to fly up there like a bird. The writer didn't really understand what the Lama meant, but for some reason, abandoned his idea. Then in the 80s, the Mountaineering Association again considered the issue of Mount Kailash. They decided to allow conquering the peak to Reinhold Messner, an Italian researcher who was one of the first to make a solo ascent of Everest. When he heard the offer to climb Kailash, he refused to conduct an expedition. He said, "If we conquer this mountain, then we conquer something in people's souls." The climber knew that this mountain was a sacred place for local Tibetans. Pilgrims from all over the world came to its foot. Reinhold Messner knew this and didn't want to do something that could offend other people. No one is allowed to climb to the top of this mountain, but you can go to its foot to feel the energy and enjoy the beautiful view. Put a photo of the Rainbow Mountains and a canvas with a painted landscape next. It will be difficult to distinguish the drawing from reality. These mountains look like paintings. This is a real art of nature. Rainbow Mountains, located in one of the geological parks of China, shimmer with almost all the colors of the rainbow. The rocks seem to be covered with glass and reflect sunlight. This place got these colors thanks to the sandstone and minerals. These substances have been pressed for 25 million years and have made Rainbow Mountains one of the most beautiful places on Earth. We are in the Philippines. There are more than 1,000 unusual hills spread over a vast area.
No, this is not a photo of chocolates. This is chocolate hills. They're small. The height of the largest reaches about 400 feet. You can quickly climb to the top in a few minutes. The peculiarity of these hills is that hundreds of thousands of people daily sprinkle these peaks with millions of tons of chocolate chips. And then, when it melts, the incredible smell of cocoa spreads throughout the territory. Okay, just kidding. Of course it's not chocolate chips. Every hill is covered with green grass. During the dry season, it dries out and gets a chocolate brown hue. This landscape is just a great photo for a package of sweets. Perhaps some company has already printed it on its box. Imagine a small mountain, about 33 feet high and 330 feet wide. It's not even a mountain, but a small hill. Nothing grows on it. No grass, no trees, just dark sand. But the peculiarity of this mountain is that it can move. Every year, it passes a distance of about 66 feet. Look at it, remember its position, and come back in 12 months. It will change the location, but also change its shape. Moving Mountain is located in the savanna of Tanzania. This massive dune has been moving in different directions for 3 million years. In fact, it doesn't consist of sand, but of magnetized volcanic ash. Once upon a time, a volcano erupted here. The settled ash formed these hills. If you take a handful of this ash and throw it into the air, it will be attracted to the total mass of the dune. A strong wind makes them move, but magnetic forces keep the sand together. One day, the mountain split into two parts and went in different directions. One of the most mysterious and strange mountains is located in North Carolina. This is Mount Brown. Externally, you won't find anything special in it, but try to take a tent and spend a couple nights there. Perhaps you will remember these nights for the rest of your life. People have often seen mysterious lights flying around this mountain. These strange fireballs fly high speeds over the top and disappear into the evening sky. Sometimes they disappear, appear, and disappear again. At first, people thought this was the result of ignited evaporating nitrogen, but this theory was refuted. Then, someone said that the balls were the light from the locomotive's headlights, but after the railway was flooded and the train stopped working, people continued to see the lights. There were reports of white, yellow, orange, and blue lights. Many are sure that they are optical illusions. One physics professor decided to check the validity of this version. He spent several years in this region, next to the mountain. Almost every day he filmed the rock, and one day he managed to catch these strange objects. In July 2016, he recorded Brown Mountain with 2 cameras from different angles, and both filmed a flying fireball. If it were an optical illusion or glare on lenses, then one of the cameras wouldn't have captured this phenomenon. This proves that the balls are real, but their nature is still unknown. One of the men claimed he had touched the flying ball when it was flying on the highway. The man said he felt an electric current. Now this place attracts thousands of tourists from all over the world. Fans of strange and unexplained phenomena like to come here. This mountain looks pretty scary and lifeless. It's located on a small volcanic island in the Tasman Sea, Australia. The island is called Ball's Pyramid. The sharp mountain range on this land has a triangular shape and a height of 1,800 feet. This is almost twice the size of the Eiffel Tower. It seems like some evil mad scientist or vampire lives on the top. Being on the island and climbing the cliff is dangerous because of the slippery, rocky surface. Sailors discovered this place in 1788. They thought the island was uninhabited and didn't want to explore it. Then, after more than 200 years, people still wanted to explore it. This place was considered lifeless for a long time, but scientists found unusual inhabitants there in 2001. They were climbing the mountain and found a strange bush at the height of about 100 feet. Something was stirring inside it. Scientists pushed aside the branches and saw a colony of big insects, land lobsters or walking sausages. These little guys are from the family of stick insects. They do look like sausages. Each of them is about 6 inches and has 6 tenacious paws and has a solid brown shell. On that day, scientists saw 27 insects. The most exciting thing is that people believed land lobsters were extinct at the beginning of the 20th century. How did they end up on this mountain? And how did they manage to survive in this remote,
lifeless place? No one knows.
It's been decades since the last manned moon landing, Apollo 17, which happened in December 1972. Isn't it time we thought about going back to our dusty satellite, and maybe even staying there? NASA has made a promise on this subject. They're preparing to send astronauts on the moon again, perhaps by 2025. This will all happen through a program called Artemis. It's also going to include the first woman ever to experience the lunar surface. Now you might ask, why haven't we done this already? One former NASA administrator said something interesting on the subject. It's not because of scientific or technological issues. Problem was that the potential projects took too long and were just too costly. You see, space travel, especially when it involves humans, isn't easy on the pockets. It's true that, in recent years, NASA had budgets of billions of dollars. Sure sounds like enough money, right? Well, not when you check out their to-do list. That's because they have to consider everything. From telescopes and giant rocket projects to missions also targeting the Sun, Jupiter, Mars, and beyond. When you look at it this way, NASA needs to be very good at budgeting to achieve all those goals. It's not just because of finances, though. The moon itself is quite problematic. It poses real dangers that cannot be taken lightly. For starters, its surface is filled with craters and boulders that aren't easy to land on. Then, there is the moon dust, or regolith, if you'd like to call it by its scientific name. It was created over many years by meteorite impacts. It's extremely harsh and sticks to everything. It can potentially damage spacesuits, vehicles, and systems quite quickly. Also, dealing with the lunar habitat isn't a walk in the park either. The moon has no protective atmosphere. What this means is that for 14 days at a time, the lunar surface is faced with harsh rays from the sun. That period is followed by another 2 weeks of total darkness. All these changes create extreme temperatures, which us humans are not really accustomed to. There are solutions, don't worry. NASA is working on dust and sun-resistant spacesuits and vehicles. They're even developing a system that might supply electricity during those lunar nights. What's even more interesting about this system is it could come in handy on Mars too, once we get there. NASA also needs to draw in really smart people for its projects. Think about it. The average age of the people working for the mission control for Apollo 13 was just 26 years old. And these people had already been part of numerous missions by that time, which means they'd had considerable experience from a very young age. But here's where other individuals can help too. In recent years, it wasn't just NASA who's been working tirelessly to revolutionize space travel. There are many successful people out there with enough resources to join in on these efforts. Some are developing new types of rockets that can land on the moon too. In total, NASA landed 12 people on our satellite. It's definitely one of the most awesome moments in its history, if not the best. And those astronauts did amazing things up there. They brought back rocks, took snapshots, did science experiments, and even left flags behind. These were all important moments of the Apollo missions. But they weren't meant to create a safe place for humans on the moon. Scientists have had this idea of a lunar space station for a long time now. It's only logical. After all, it's just a 3-day trip from Earth. It means we can, technically, afford to make little mistakes here and there, without messing up the whole project. Plus, we'd learn so much before venturing even further into space. A moon base could provide fuel for deep space missions. We could also build telescopes up there and launch them way easier in space. It could also help us in another important project. Figure out how to make Mars habitable too. Not to mention, a lunar space station would help us learn more about the moon's origin. Who knows? It could even bring in some money because of all that fun, exciting lunar tourism. Either way, the Apollo moon program took a lot of work. For starters, let's look at the sheer number of people involved. Around 400,000 from every corner of the states. Not everything was picture perfect, tough. There were two main unfortunate events. Firstly, a fire mishap at the launch pad of Apollo 1. Secondly, an oxygen tank decided to throw a tantrum on Apollo 13, causing severe issues mid-mission. An important part of the project was Saturn V. It is to this day the most powerful rocket flown successfully, being 36 stories high. Still finding it hard to picture? This rocket stood twice as tall as Niagara Falls. Thanks to Saturn V, NASA successfully completed 13 missions. This included chauffeuring 24 astronauts towards the moon, with half of them even having a little walk on its surface. The existing rockets and space shuttles can't go beyond low Earth orbit. In simpler terms, they can't reach the moon with all the gadgets astronauts need to thrive. Current space vehicles are just not capable of carrying that load, at least not since the Apollo missions happened. Regardless, we did make a lot of progress on Earth and are ready to send astronauts to our satellite pretty soon. Here's where the Artemis project comes in. It's a program overseen by NASA. And to make sure it all goes well, NASA previously launched Orion, a spacecraft with no crew on board to orbit the moon and return to Earth. Think of it as an automated test drive. Before we actually send people out there again, we need to make sure all the devices work properly. One day, Orion will be the vehicle that will take astronauts to the moon again. It features a launch abort system to keep astronauts safe in case something bad happens during launch. It also has a service module, which is the powerhouse that fuels and propels Orion and keeps astronauts alive with water, oxygen, power, and temperature control. All these future projects make one wonder, what will life on the moon be like anyway? We can only use our imagination for now. Some say we'll be living in homes straight out of a fairy tale, something like a cozy hobbit hole. Living underground on the moon might be a must. That's due to the scorching temperatures and the lack of oxygen. If you add meteorite threats and the non-stop radiation, it's no wonder we can't just walk on its surface. What about transportation? Big and small companies alike are trying to create the ideal moon ride. If current estimations are current, one type of moon taxi will take off as soon as 2024. Unlike our current rockets, these space taxis won't have to deal with the harsh conditions of re-entering Earth's atmosphere. It will be easier for them to make multiple round trips. To support our lunar living, we'll need to have a special area for space taxis to safely take off and land. Think of it as a landing pad on a firm, flat stretch of moon surface, protected by walls to shield against moon dust. Moving around on the moon's surface will be made easier too. The next generation vehicles we're talking about will have their own controlled environment, which means you won't need a spacesuit while inside. Should feel like stepping out of your space ride for a bit. Then of course, you'll need to put on your spacesuit. All right. So we've got our homes and our rides sorted. But what about fuel? That's where the moon throws us a lifeline. The moon's lighter gravity means we don't need as much power to escape its pull. Plus, the moon has ice, and that's super handy. We might be able to convert this ice into rocket fuel. We'll need dedicated space gadgets to help gather this ice. One such tool is called Trident. It's like a drill, perfect for digging into the icy moon surface. Additional robotic helpers would then turn this ice into fuel and deliver it to a space gas station. If this works, rockets on their way to Mars could stop by for a quick fuel top-up before continuing their journey.
Ah, Phoenix. This sizzling gem in the Sonoran Desert isn't just another American city. It's more like a giant oven where you can throw a party, as long as you don't forget the ice. Seriously, if you find yourself here in the summer, brace yourself for some serious heat. We're talking about temperatures that regularly pass 100 degrees. And in 2024, Phoenix hit 110 degrees 55 times during the summer, tying the record set just the year before. Now, I get it if you're not a fan of hot weather, but apparently a lot of people love living in a sauna. Phoenix ranks as the 5th largest city in the United States, and it is the capital and most populous city in Arizona, with 1.7 million residents as of 2024. And if we're talking about the metropolitan area, also known as the Valley of the Sun, the population is almost 5 million. Yet, good luck finding someone actually born here. Out of every 4 Phoenix residents, 3 were born somewhere else. Believe it or not, Phoenix wasn't always this bustling, crowded place. It became one. A few decades ago, it was just a sleepy little dot on the map. Back in the 1940s, the population was around 65,000. It wasn't even close to cracking the top 100 list of the largest U.S. cities. Now, at that time, Phoenix was mostly an agricultural hub, and its economy revolved around what they called the 5 C's: cotton, citrus, cattle, climate, and copper. But things really started to change in the 1950s thanks to one life-changing invention. Drumroll please? The air conditioner. Actually, it was the portable version that came out in 1945, created by an American inventor named Robert Sherman. Phoenix residents owe a lot to Robert for making life bearable during scorching summers. Before AC, people in Phoenix would literally move their beds outside and build sleeping porches. They'd protect that kind of outdoorsy space with light curtains or some kind of net to keep the dust and bugs out. Fun. Anyway, the point is that the air conditioner played a big part in making Phoenix an easier place to live. Since the 1940s, this city in Arizona has transformed from a dusty little town into a sprawling urban jungle, and it's still one of the top 10 fastest-growing metro areas in the U.S. The best part is, it looks like that won't change anytime soon, since this 519-square-mile metropolis is surrounded by rolling desert, with plenty of room to keep growing as far as the eye can see. So, who's dropping everything to move to Phoenix? Well, Californians are the city's biggest fans. According to a recent survey, a third of all new renters moving to Phoenix come from Los Angeles. Okay, that survey might not be the most reliable since it only applies to the source's clients, but it does line up with U.S. Census Bureau data from 2019, which says that 70,000 Californians moved to Arizona in the previous year. The connection between Phoenix and LA is so strong that some people even call Phoenix the next LA. You've got to give Phoenix credit for capitalizing on its proximity to Southern California. The city offers lower taxes, fewer regulations, and lower costs of living, which makes it a magnet for businesses, especially in high-tech and service industries. So, in the 90s, Phoenix was considered a non-stop generator of jobs. In the last few years, we've seen the number of jobs only go up, and the unemployment rate has dropped by nearly half, going from 6.3 in January 2014 to 3.4 in the same month in 2024. Now, when it comes to big city problems, you can't avoid talking about traffic. But here's another reason why Phoenix is a dream city. It doesn't even come close to the traffic nightmares you find in places like LA. Estimates show that people in Los Angeles waste about 119 hours a year just sitting in traffic. But in Phoenix, it's more like 61 hours. Huge difference, huh? And let's not even start talking about the money people waste just sitting in traffic. In LA, drivers burn through about $2,440 worth of gas per year. In Phoenix, they waste 25 gallons of fuel, which ends up costing about $952. Yeah, that's still a lot of cash, but compared to LA, come on, that's a steal. Phoenix being okay in terms of traffic might have a lot to do with how the city was designed. Just take a look at a map of Phoenix. You'll notice it looks like someone took a ruler and drew perfectly straight lines for the roads. That's because the city was laid out in a grid system. This setup makes it so much easier to get around, especially compared to cities full of confusing twists, U-turns, and one-way streets. It just simplifies things, whether you're a local or a tourist. Plus, Phoenix has nice wide streets. Most cities have one major road and a bunch of narrow streets that just can't handle heavy traffic. But Phoenix has wide roads everywhere. So, when the freeways get jammed, you can just hop onto a parallel street and still get to work without stressing out too much. When you look at all the job opportunities and the relatively smooth traffic, it's no wonder people are willing to put up with the heat and move to Phoenix. But don't get it twisted, the heat is no joke. It is really, really hot and sunny out there. We're talking about 300 days of sunshine on average, or about 85% daylight hours per year. But once again, Phoenix has made the best of it. And all that constant sunshine has turned Phoenix into one of the top solar energy cities in the country. Now, you may be wondering, a city in the middle of the desert with barely any rain, do they actually have enough water? Well, they do. Phoenix has its water situation pretty well sorted out, thanks to multiple sources. I mean, they don't rely on rain alone, which is a good thing because, desert life. Most of their water comes from way up north and east of the valley, where snow melts off the mountains and flows into giant reservoirs, storing it up for those dry years. But most of Phoenix's water comes from the Salt River Project, which brings water through canals and pipelines from the Salt and Verde rivers. Then there is the Central Arizona Project, which transports water all the way from the Colorado River. They even get a bit of water from underground wells. And Phoenix doesn't want to waste a drop, so they're smart about recycling, reusing treated water to keep parks green, and even recharging their groundwater. Since Phoenix is all about sunny skies nearly every day of the year, it's normal that people can get a little moody when it actually rains. But here's the thing. Phoenix always gets a surprise up its sleeve, even when it comes to bad weather. When it rains in the deserts, locals get treated to this unique earthy smell. It's thanks to the creosote bush, a desert plant that releases an amazing fragrance when the rain hits it. People describe it as the smell of rain, and honestly, it's one of those fresh, clean scents that makes you forget you're in the desert for a second. And if you've never stopped to think about why Phoenix is called Phoenix, well, it's based on that famous legend of the bird that rises from the ashes. Now, after knowing all the special things about this city and its unique ability to turn challenges into advantages, we can say the name couldn't have been better chosen. Okay, here's a quick pop quiz on geography and touristy stuff. What's the biggest city in Italy? Did you say Rome? Then you got it right. Rome has a population of over 2 million people. And what would you say is the current population of Venice? Well, that's a tricky one to know by heart. But to answer correctly, in 2022, it was a little over 258,000 people. Now, what if I told you that for 80% of them, the Venice they live in isn't the tourist and historical one with all the canals. It's rather the other side of town. If you know someone who's traveled to Venice before, they may have sent you a postcard with an image of a gondola in a canal. I bet you never imagined that Venice could also just look like this, just a regular old Italian city. As tourists, we have a strong misconception about what Venice is. We think the real Venice is what we see in the movies. Well, I hate to be the one to pop your illusion, but there's more to Venice than straight canals and old bridges. Here are the boundaries of the real Venice. Probably the postcards you get only picture this bit of the city called Centro Storico, or Historical Center. But the city also includes the mainland, called Terra Firma, where most Venetians live today. The interesting thing to look at is how the number of people living in the historical center has decreased over the years. From then on, the number started to reduce more with each passing year. Today, only 50,000 people can afford to live there. To understand that, let's travel back in time for a moment. Before Venice became an important Italian city, it was nothing but a fisherman's village. It was only around the 5th century that people decided to take a chance and build on the marshy ground of the Venetian islands. If you've ever wondered how Venice holds up, let's just say it's due to strong blocks of wood driven deep into the ground. As it turns out, you need oxygen and water to ruin wood, and in marshy soils, there isn't much oxygen, so the buildings were safe. It was during the Middle Ages that Venice became one of the world's most important maritime empires. You might remember that's where Marco Polo, the famous merchant and explorer, came from. The city was extremely well located, right in the Adriatic Sea, and had access to huge commercial empires of the time, like the city of Constantinople. At that time, the most prestigious jobs you can get were like the ones Marco Polo had, anything related to long-distance trading. Since then, Venice consists of 118 islands, and some say there are around 400 bridges in the city. Quick question here, can you name at least 2 of the most famous Venetian islands? Let's start with Burano. The island of Burano is famous for its lace making and its super colorful landscape. FYI, Burano is also home to a less famous leaning tower than the one in Pisa. It's called the Tower of Burano. And then there's the island of Murano. They are famous for their products of fine glass. You can find anything from huge vases to water glasses, jewelry, and so on. They're quite exquisite, but also super expensive. But you know what they say, time changes everything. In the 20th century, Venice was no longer the trading hub it once was. Its economic power was failing seriously, so the city decided to invest in something else, its historical value. And the best way they found how to do that was through preservation. Let's face it, if you're a tourist who enjoys history, you would jump at the opportunity of visiting a UNESCO heritage site, wouldn't you? Initially, this was rather good for the city. But the thing is, as tourism in Venice skyrocketed, the old dynamics of the city started to change to keep up with the intense tourism. Truth is, in our day and age, lots of tourists rather buy small and cheap souvenirs than invest their money in expensive manufactured goods, such as the classic Murano glasses. The traditional Venetian stores that were open hundreds of years ago just didn't have the economic power to compete with new stores that opened to cater specifically for tourists. And then, what happened next is something we often call falling down the rabbit hole. Because, as it turned out, tourists attracted more tourists, and Venice lost control over it. The maximum sustainable number of tourists in Venice would be around 22,500 people per day. But in 2021, Venice saw up to 80,000 tourists per day in the city center. Things started getting so out of hand in Venice's historical center that UNESCO itself threatened to put the city on its list of heritage sites in danger of severe damage. That's tough, huh? The city is still trying to find ways to mitigate the effects of tourism. The first thing they did was to ban those huge cruise ships from stopping in the city's historical area. Oh, and the city produced a tourism fee. Normally, anyone sleeping in the historical center already pays a fee. But nowadays, tourists have to register their entry and pay a daily fee for exploring the main island. The profits from this fee are directed toward making life in Venice's city center more affordable. Hopefully these policies will allow Venetians to move back to Venice's city center. Ciao!
This area might just be the most important spot in America right now, as it is worth over $1 trillion. There's something incredibly valuable hidden right here at Thacker Pass, and it is going to shake things up, not just in Nevada, but in the US economy and its global relations. The McDermott Caldera is a massive area, about 28 miles long by 22 miles wide, stretching across northern Nevada and southern Oregon. It's in Humboldt County, a quiet, rural place with just one main city that's going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. That's because they found white gold there. We're talking about lithium. And to explain why this metal is so important, we need a scale. On one side, we place a chunk of lithium, and on the other, an apple. What do you think will happen? If both have the same volume, the scale is going to tip toward the apple. That's because lithium is super light. Its density is about 0.3 ounces per cubic inch, which makes it the lightest solid you can find at room temperature. Lithium is also extremely reactive. That means it combines with other elements very easily, and it can catch fire just as easily. Mix it with water? Fire. Expose it to air? Yep, fire again. But when you combine its lightness with its high reactivity, you get a material that's perfect for batteries. Like the one powering your smartphone, laptop, or even your electric car. Nevada's been hiding this treasure for about 16 million years. The McDermott caldera used to be a volcanic hotspot, spewing molten rock and creating a huge lake filled with mineral-rich waters. Over time, that lake dried up, leaving behind thick layers of clay loaded with lithium. Right now, Thacker Pass Mine is sitting on one of the biggest untapped lithium reserves in the world, worth about $1.5 trillion. If everything goes as planned, they expect it to produce about 40,000 tons of high-quality lithium a year. And that's enough to make batteries for up to 800,000 electric cars. Like I mentioned earlier, this metal is the backbone of modern batteries. And with the world racing toward green energy, the demand for lithium is skyrocketing. Since 2020, its price has gone up more than 10 times, making it the most expensive battery metal in the world. That means it's way more expensive than magnesium, nickel, cobalt, and other materials used in rechargeable batteries. Right now, we're using about 1.16 million tons of lithium per year, and roughly 85% of it goes into making batteries, mostly for cars. Between 2030 and 2040, experts think we will need to double the money we're putting into production, from $94 billion to $188 billion. At the same time, investment in batteries will jump by over 200%, reaching $686 billion. Finally, by 2050, the demand for lithium is expected to be more than 10 times higher than what we're producing now. Sorry, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I just want to show how important Thacker Pass will be for the whole world. This mine is going to be key to keeping everything running. I mean, literally, since most of the future demand will be for things like cars, electric bikes, scooters, and renewable energy storage. Nevada could also be the epicenter of a global energy revolution, with the US aiming to cut pollution by 50% by 2030. A big part of that is replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric ones. And to make that happen, America is going to need a whole lot more lithium than it's producing right now. Nowadays, most of the metal used in the United States come from countries like Chile and Argentina. So if America wants to be a leader in this market, it really needs to invest more and more in projects like Thacker Pass. But there's another challenge. Finding lithium in a mine is one thing, but refining it is another story. Just like diamonds are carefully cut and shaped to bring out their sparkle and sold in rings and necklaces, something similar needs to be done with lithium. The raw material that comes from the mines has to be refined into a pure form that can actually be used in things like batteries. And China pretty much dominates this part of the market, and they're responsible for about 75% of global lithium-ion battery production. In other words, it doesn't matter if a country finds this powerful metal on its land, it will probably still need China to help refine it. So, the US is eager to strengthen its supply chain. In fact, they're so excited about this possibility that authorities have invested over $2 billion in loans into the Nevada project. Because of that, Thacker Pass could make the US a leader in lithium production worldwide. If their estimates are right, the McDermott caldera could hold nearly half of the world's known lithium reserves. It would almost double the reserves found in Bolivia's salt flats, for example, which used to hold the record for the world's largest deposit. This discovery is about to change Humboldt County for good. Those quiet streets surrounded by nature will never feel the same again. The mine will need about 2,000 workers who will probably move there from other cities. Those workers will need houses, hospitals, schools for their kids, and all the necessary services. Do you see how it's like a ripple effect? For every person hired to work on the project during construction, 6 more people will get hired in the state to support them. Thacker Pass is also going to have a huge impact on the economy, not just in Nevada, but all across the country. People expect the mine to be active for 35 years, and each year it's expected to generate over $2 billion. But here's the thing. In Thacker Pass, they'll be extracting lithium from clay, and this process has never been done on such a huge scale before. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But if it works, it could completely change the industry. Big question. Who's interested in all this? Well, we've got 3 big companies eyeing the lithium market in the US. First, there's ExxonMobil. The oil giant wants to start producing lithium by 2027, and they have plans to become the top supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Then there's General Motors, the company behind big car brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac. They're so interested in this business that they agreed to pay $625 million for a 38% stake in Thacker Pass. And finally, Tesla. In 2023, they started building a factory in Texas to process lithium. It's all part of their plan to handle more of their supply chain themselves. Now that you know how important lithium is, you might be wondering, what if we run out? Well, that could happen, since it comes from mining and, just like gold, is a finite resource. But that doesn't mean we'd have to give up smartphones or electric cars. If we ever run out of this metal, we'd probably find new ways to produce batteries. In fact, some experts think thermal batteries could be the next big thing. They store extra energy from renewable resources like wind or solar power, which are very cheap. So they represent a new way of storing energy at a small fraction of the cost. Nowadays, they're primarily used for powering the production of steel, cement, and chemicals. Thermal batteries are also being used to heat and cool large buildings. However, more and more projects are focusing on bringing this technology into private spaces, like houses and apartments. Experts are optimistic that initiatives like these could make thermal batteries as well known as electric batteries, and they might soon become a regular part of our daily lives. For every 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit increase in a country's average temperature, the GDP per capita drops by at least 1.1%. To put it simply, with every step you take from the North Pole to the equator, not only do you get hotter, but you also get poorer. Even though life in freezing cold countries can seem miserable, 74.2% of the world's billionaires are concentrated in the global north. And there are at least 4 theories explaining that. The simplest theory is tied to biology. Cold weather is believed to keep germs away, leading to better health and productivity. Sounds good, but I'll challenge that later. Next, there's the sloth theory from ancient Greece, and it's more about climate in general. Greeks believed their ideal weather made them wealthier, while hotter regions were seen as less creative. The third idea is based on economic and anthropological studies. You see, experts noticed some time ago that colder countries have inclusive institutions that offer equal job and life opportunities and protect markets and private property. Naturally, such conditions promote healthy competition and boost wealth. The last idea is tightly connected to the previous one. Long story short, richer countries tend to distribute money better because they're more inclusive. Poorer nations often have extractive institutions where a powerful elite controls wealth. While all of them seem plausible, the truth is, these ideas are borderline insane. Well, you know the theory claiming that cold climates eliminates germs and the population of colder countries doesn't get so sick? I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but the cold actually makes germs thrive. In the cold, we tend to stay inside with the whole house shut, so we share germs with each other more easily. Not only that, but during winter, the air is drier, creating the perfect environment for the flu virus to flourish. Humans are also more resistant to viruses and bacteria from their own environment because the constant contact with them makes our immune system stronger. If you look back at your history classes, you might remember that most British people struggled with the weather and bacteria found in America, while Native Americans themselves were mostly fine. And what about the sloth theory? Sorry, I don't mean it to sound offensive, but some specialists, they claim that, people in hotter countries tend to be lazier. But the truth is, the sun doesn't make us work less. Yes, the sun can make you a bit slower because you can dehydrate. But you see, the human body is biologically adapted to the climate of the place they're born in. This means that if you live in Canada, for example, you can endure the cold just fine. But Brazilians will probably handle hot days better than you. But if the sloth theory was true, how would you explain that people in Colombia work about 200 hours a year more than those from the United States? In fact, if you live in Cambodia, Myanmar, or Mexico, you're bound to work more than anyone in the world. Besides, hotter countries have a genius way to fight off laziness. It's called siesta. After lunch, it's normal to feel a bit sleepy, and if you have heavier meals like the Spanish and Italians do, you'll get extra slow. This is why after lunch they usually have a siesta, also known as a quick nap, which improves your memory and thinking skills. It may sound like a siesta makes you work less, but people who nap after lunch simply work at different hours of the day. While you make shorter lunch breaks and go home at 6 p.m., in Spain, the lunch break lasts 2 hours and the workday ends at 8 p.m. They work when it's not so hot outside and even get to take a power nap. The past is also crowded with people who lived rich lives despite the scorching sun. The ancient Egypt civilization may have existed thousands of years ago, but they were one of the richest civilizations ever, even though they lived in a place that was super hot and super dry. We also have the Aztecs, who lived in Mexico back when Mexico didn't exist yet. This region is not so famous for its cold weather, I can tell you that. But the Aztec civilization still managed to have a capital that was bigger than London, Paris, and Madrid of the time. On top of that, many of the inventions we have today that make a lot of people rich were created thanks to math and science. Two things born in hot places, like Mesopotamia and India. Now, to make all those economic and anthropological studies sound simpler, let's start with the most obvious part. It's true that hotter countries usually make money out of their natural resources. They don't have such strong industries, and the money is concentrated in the hands of the elite. All of this reduces the GDP, that thing that estimates whether a country is wealthy or not. Remember we said richer countries have inclusive institutions? These institutions are basically laws that make sure people have equal job and life opportunities, including nice houses and a good salary. Poor countries are not very good at this inclusive institution thing, but it's not by choice. This is actually a consequence of the age of exploration. In case you were sleeping during your history classes, let me remind you. The age of exploration is that time between the 15th and 17th centuries, when many kingdoms in Europe were exploring the seas and setting up colonies all over the world. I know it feels like this was a long time ago, but many countries that were colonies back then only became independent during the 20th and 21st century. This is why many poor countries don't have solid industries and markets, because their institutions and laws date back to when they were still colonies, and their years as colonies depleted resources and didn't provide a good infrastructure. Besides, saying that private property reduces the income and inequality gap is kind of absurd. It's true that developing countries like Brazil and South Africa are highly unequal, but in the US, for example, 1% of the richest people in the country make 139 times more money than the poorest part of the population. And there were more than 700,000 homeless people in 2024. Besides, 1% of the world's population is wealthier than the rest of humankind put together. If inclusive institutions were really that powerful in richer countries, then there wouldn't be more than 1 billion people living in acute poverty all over the world. There's no point in saying that private property makes everyone's lives better if people can't even afford to have a house in the first place. And using the GDP to calculate the wealth of a country is not exactly the best way to understand poverty, because the GDP only considers how much money the industry itself makes. It ignores, for example, the question of whether people who work in those industries have good jobs, if they are well paid and have a good life. The GDP also ignores inequality, which means it ignores those inclusive institutions we mentioned before. In the United States, there are about 835 billionaires, but 11% of the American population is still very poor. So, my hot take here is that inclusive institutions are not that inclusive, and that money is not that well distributed in the first place. Different cultures also have different concepts of what it means to be wealthy. In London, for example, being able to afford food, clothes, and shelter does not make you rich. To them, you're simply surviving. If you want to be truly wealthy in London, you might have to hire a housekeeper, buy a horse, and have a personal Pilates instructor. But to the Awa or the Yanomami tribes, money doesn't even exist. They produce only the necessary, and if they have a surplus, they will trade with other tribes. I guess the fact that poor countries are all located closer to the equator line is not just a simple historical coincidence.
So it turns out that so-called rich countries are facing a big problem. People are not having kids. Not enough, at least. On average, women need to have 2 children to keep things balanced, but they're only having 1 or none at all. This issue comes down to the fertility rate, or simply the average number of kids a woman is expected to have in her lifetime. When that number's too low, it means more people are passing away in these countries than being born, and that can destroy the economy. Think of a rich country – the US, Germany, Japan. Great! Pick any wealthy nation you like, and I can promise you one thing – its fertility rate is below 2.1, and that's a problem. Here's why. Meet Mary and John, and over here we've got Jack and Lucy. That's 4 people total. Now, both couples get married. Mary and John have 2 kids, but Jack and Lucy only have 1. Now, what does that mean? Simple math. We're down by 1 person. And if this keeps happening, generation after generation, the population starts to shrink. The situation gets pretty scary when we zoom in on certain countries. Take Spain, Italy, or Poland. These countries have some of the lowest fertility rates in the European Union, with women there having, on average, just 1 kid. And that's a big problem, because it drags down entire economies. Picture a triangle. Young people and workers at the bottom and the elderly at the top. In many rich countries, that bottom part is shrinking fast, with fewer babies being born each year. So it's like this triangle is flipping upside down. Fewer young folks and workers, but more and more older people. With fewer workers and more retirees, the economy struggles to stay balanced. It's like the domino effect. Fewer people working means fewer people paying taxes. Meanwhile, the older population at the top keeps growing. And now we have a way bigger group depending on pensions and stuff like Social Security. So we're left asking, who's going to pay for all these retirements? Now, some countries are in hotter water than others, and South Korea is really feeling the heat. They've got more and more people getting older, while fewer and fewer babies are being born. In fact, they've got the lowest fertility rate in the world. In 2023, it hit rock bottom. 0.72 births per woman. Now, personally, I don't know how you can have 3/4 of a kid, but hey, that's statistics for you. Meanwhile, if things keep going like this, Korea's population could shrink by half by 2100. Over the last 20 years, their authorities have invested at the equivalent of $286 billion in this issue, and they've rolled out a bunch of incentives to turn things around. First up, pocket money. If a married couple in Korea decides to have their first kid, the government hands over about $10,000 split into monthly payments to help out. While that might sound impressive, it's only about 3 times the average monthly wage. And in Seoul, one of the most expensive cities in the world, that doesn't go very far. Next, a home. Paying rent in Seoul is insane, but the government doesn't want people to leave the capital because of it. So they're stepping in. Recently, they've promised to give families around $300 a month to help with housing, until the kid turns 2. Then again, $300 seems great, but it only covers about 11% of the rent for a 3-bedroom apartment in the city center. And last but not least, health care. Hospital bills are covered, but the couple must be married, on paper and everything. South Korea came up with all this to fix the problem. Otherwise, their population might get older, poorer, and more dependent on others for care. But when you think about it, all these incentives really come down to one thing: giving out cash. Even so, their demographic problem hasn't gotten any better. So the authorities had to come up with more creative solutions, like offering jobs with flexible hours for parents with kids under 5. And they can borrow things like toys or strollers from the government, totally for free. So why don't women want to become mothers? There's a bunch of reasons. But one of the most important is work. Women are getting more education and grabbing more opportunities in the job market than ever before. But a lot of jobs have crazy hours, with people working late every single day. So many women get stuck in that cycle, waking up early, going to work, coming home late, and sleeping. Then it all starts over the next day. They don't have time to meet a partner, and even less time to raise someone. In fact, education in general is one of the biggest reasons why birth rates are dropping. Spending so many years in school, then in college, means women are pushing back the age they have their first kid. Once they finish their education, they often want to focus on work and building their careers before starting a family. So they're not becoming moms in their teens or early 20s anymore. And by the time they hit 30, things aren't much better. Sure, they might finally land a stable job, but most employment policies still don't offer enough support for childcare. But it's not only education. Younger generations are getting delayed in, well, everything. I mean, it's way harder for them to tick off all the adulting boxes, like having a well-paying job or buying a nice house. And these things are usually a big part of whether people decide to start a family or not. Another reason people aren't having kids: putting a new human into this world is expensive and time-consuming. The average childcare costs in Australia, for example, have gone up faster than inflation. School tuition, even for public schools, takes a big chunk out of parents' budgets. Think about it. Computers, uniforms, field trips, extracurricular activities – all that adds up to the cost of financing someone's education. Over 13 years, parents spend over $80,000 on public education. And if we're talking about private schools, that number jumps up to almost $350,000. And don't worry, these costs are just for one kid. Now imagine having 2 or 3. So what is the solution? Well, there are 2 ways to tackle the problem that don't involve pushing the population to have more kids. Nations can keep their population healthier and employed longer, like what Singapore is doing. They're putting a lot of effort into raising the retirement age, offering midlife training, and encouraging companies to hire older workers, like those over 69. Another way is to encourage people from other countries to come in, especially young ones who are ready to work. That's, for example, the strategy Canada uses. Now, if the goal is really to get women to have more kids, a lot of countries use the baby bonus strategy, basically giving money and benefits to families, just like South Korea does. The problem is that some experts say it is pretty ineffective, as financial incentives don't address the complexity of the issue. For them, what these wealthy countries need to do is offer better career and housing opportunities for young people, like giving incentives for companies to offer more flexible hours or work-from-home options for young parents. They also need to push strategies to lower the cost of housing, especially in big cities. Plus, they need to focus more on the aging population, using technological innovations to support them. That would help not just parents, but families as a whole. So, what do you think?
These dark patches on Greenland's ice sheet aren't just any old stains. Every summer, the ice, which is usually bright white, turns murky gray in certain areas. This so-called dark zone was a huge mystery for a long time, until some studies discovered that this weird transformation was connected to the odd appearance of red, green, and brown-colored algae. The scariest part is that this algae bloom keeps growing. The dark zone is getting darker, and terrifying microbes might start appearing. Now, the rest of the world should be concerned. The Greenland ice sheet is like a massive ice blanket that covers around 80% of the island. It's so thick that it holds about 8% of the world's freshwater ice. For most of the year, the ice looks like a giant untouched white sheet stretching over the land. But when summer rolls around and temperatures start to rise, things begin to change. The ice melts, revealing rocky areas along the coast. And as you move further inland, that once smooth white ice becomes darker. This is the dark zone, and it covers an area of around 248 miles in length and 62 miles at its widest point. This weird phenomenon happens basically for two reasons. The first one is black carbon. Just like dust that builds up on your bookshelf, the ice in Greenland has the same issue. The wind carries a mix of dust and soot to this icy area. But unlike your bookshelf, you can't just wipe it off with a cloth. In Greenland's case, this dirty mix settles on the ice and sticks around for thousands of years. So, the dark zone is basically covered in a fine layer of dust that's built up over time. Back in 2014, researchers analyzed this dirty mix and found that the darker ice areas were filled with black carbon. This black carbon didn't just appear out of thin air. Well, actually, it sorta did. Scientists believe it mostly comes from smoke produced by wildfires in northern Canada and Alaska somewhere in the past. As you might guess, black carbon is black, which is why it makes the ice look darker. Now, the second big reason for the Greenland ice sheet's summer makeover has to do with those algae we mentioned earlier. We're mostly talking about two types of it: the Ancylonema alaskana and the Ancylonema nordenskjoldii. Both of them love cold water regions. During winter, they stay in a dormant state deep within the ice. But when spring comes, they start to slowly migrate to the surface. By the time summer hits, they're ready to bloom and soak up nearly 24 hours of sunlight each day for photosynthesis and growth. Normally, these algae are green, but when exposed to sunlight, they turn brown as a natural way to protect themselves from harmful ultraviolet rays. And this color change is also what makes the ice in Greenland look darker. So far, this has been normal behavior. What's really alarming is that these algae blooms are getting bigger and bigger every year. This happens because they thrive on phosphorus, a nutrient that's plentiful out there and comes from a mineral called hydroxylapatite. This mineral is found in a type of rock that breaks down into tiny dust particles, which are then blown across the ice by the wind. As the climate gets warmer, the rocks dry out more, and stronger winds carry more dust. More dust means more phosphorus, leading to more algae growth. See? It is a cycle, and it keeps getting worse every year. Studying this is crucial to understanding why the dark zone keeps getting bigger. From the year 2000 to 2012, its size increased by 12%. But you might be wondering, why should we care? After all, it's just ice getting darker, right? Well, not exactly. Think about how you can't stand wearing black clothes on a hot, sunny day. They soak up the heat and make you feel even hotter. That's because darker surfaces absorb more sunlight. The same thing happens to ice. Together, dust, black carbon, and algae blooms are responsible for about 70% of the variability in albedo on the Greenland ice sheet. Albedo is just a fancy word for how reflective a surface is. If you take two surfaces, one white and shiny and the other dark and rough, the white one will reflect a lot of light and heat, giving it a high albedo. The dark one, on the other hand, will absorb more light and heat, so it has a low albedo. During the summer, the Greenland ice sheet experiences a reduction in albedo. This means the ice absorbs more sunlight, and when ice absorbs more sunlight, it melts faster than it should. This is why understanding what's happening in the dark zone is so important. It helps predict how quickly the Greenland ice sheet is melting and how it can affect the rest of the world. Greenland's ice sheet is the second largest in the world. covering an area about the size of all the land in the United States east of the Mississippi River. And its huge mass of ice averages a thickness of 1.4 miles. Unfortunately, the ice loss has skyrocketed. Back in the 1990s, Greenland was losing about 25 billion tons of ice per year. Now, it's losing around 234 billion tons per year. That's nearly 10 times more ice melting away each year. According to NASA, if all of Greenland's ice sheet were to melt, it would increase global sea levels by about 24 feet. That could be catastrophic for coastal countries and cities around the world. The Netherlands could be submerged, the Bahamas could be almost completely wiped out, and many of the Philippines Islands would be at risk of disappearing. All of this may seem like a distant reality, and it is true that most scientists believe it would take several hundred or even thousands of years for the ice sheet to melt completely. But it is important to know that Greenland didn't always have this thick layer of ice. Very recently, researchers took a close look at some sediment from the bottom of a 2-mile deep ice core extracted from the center of Greenland. They found that the soil had traces of willow wood, insect parts, fungi, and even poppy seeds. So these fossils are the first direct evidence that Greenland's ice sheet melted away in the recent geological past, around 400,000 years ago. At that time, Greenland was home to a green tundra landscape with insects and plants. This discovery is both fascinating and scary because it shows that the ice sheet collapsed before and might be more fragile than scientists originally thought. There is another concern too. A recent research collected meltwater from different spots on the Greenland ice sheet and found that the water samples were packed with hundreds and thousands of microbes. The concern is that they could be released into the ocean in the future. And some studies already suggest that areas near where a lot of glacial meltwater flows have a higher risk of viruses jumping to new hosts, like from animals to humans. Even though experts believe the chance of a doomsday virus coming from the glaciers is very small, it's still not zero. The truth is, we don't know much about the thousands of microbial species living on the surface of the ice, and there is simply not enough data to fully understand how dangerous these organisms might be. All of this might sound concerning, but we shouldn't panic just yet. There's still a lot we don't understand about what is darkening the Greenland ice sheet. We still need more detailed measurements of the relative abundance of dust, algae, and black carbon, as well as a better understanding of how these potentially dangerous microbes could affect our lives. The more we learn, the better we can predict what's going to happen and how we can prepare for it.
How do you prepare for a long trip? You probably look up the route on Google Maps or watch a walkthrough on YouTube. Or maybe you ask someone who's been there recently. But what if you're bound for a place humans have never existed? Yes, I'm talking about our next-door neighbor, the Red Planet. NASA is planning a mission to Mars in the late 2030s or early 2040s. That's too far in the future, so why start preparing now? Well, it's closer than you think. Rookie astronauts spend at least 2 years training just to go out in space. For every hour they spend in space, they need to spend 10 hours underwater on Earth. This training only applies to spacewalks and the International Space Station. So far, some 600 people have been to space, but humans have never set foot on Mars. Traveling to this planet will require a different kind of training. Is there a region of Earth that closely resembles Mars? The Apollo mission's astronauts trained in Nevada. This is where Neil Armstrong and his fellow astronauts got a sense of what the surface of the moon would feel like. But Mars is different from the moon. It has gravity and an atmosphere. In this aspect, it resembles our own planet. Just one country, to be more precise: Iceland. NASA used this island in the far north of Europe as a testing ground for its 2020 Mars mission. And no, the mission didn't involve humans landing on the Red Planet. Just a small rover looking for signs of life. But the high-tech robot still needs some practice. Let's do a little test of our own. Compare the landscapes on Mars and Iceland. Are you struggling to spot the difference? Good. That means that scientists have picked the ideal training grounds for the upcoming Mars mission. An area entirely barren and devoid of life. That's how one researcher involved in the mission described Iceland. And this description perfectly matches the conditions future astronauts will encounter on Mars. But what's so special about Iceland? There are valleys that were created by volcanic eruptions. The island is still young in geological terms. Simply put, it's still forming. Lava flows, water, volcanoes, raging winds. Iceland has it all. The country's slogan is the land of fire and ice. The island's population is just above 350,000. For comparison, the city of Cleveland in Ohio has more residents than the entire country of Iceland. But the size doesn't always matter. Remember Euro 2016? When England lost to Iceland 2-1, their players became stars overnight, but Icelanders are closer to the stars than you think. The country has a space agency. Yeah, you heard it correctly. Now, this agency actually consists of 2 people who are trying to promote Iceland as a terrestrial analog to Mars. In short, this means that Iceland looks a lot like the Red Planet. The local duo wants to get space scientists to choose Iceland as a training ground for future astronauts. Their biggest argument is that it's cheaper. Sending people and equipment into space is expensive. Duh! According to Elon Musk, SpaceX launches cost around $2 million. That's way less than a typical NASA launch. A large portion of space research takes place back on Earth. Antarctica is ideal for studying cold and desolate places in outer space. Hawaii is perfect for exploring lava tubes and the composition of rocks. Just imagine the logistics behind going to both of these regions at the same time. This is where Iceland comes into play. It has diverse habitats that are relatively close to each other. So what exactly will future Mars-bound astronauts do in Iceland? To answer this question, let's travel back in time. Nevada wasn't the only place NASA's astronauts visited more than half a century ago. They prepared for walking on the surface of the moon in Iceland too. Their primary objective was collecting rock samples. These can mainly be found near volcanoes and lava fields, and Iceland has plenty of those. Around 60% of the local landscape is rocky and rugged. This makes the island the size of Kentucky feel like another planet. Add that to the fact that 80% of Iceland is uninhabited, and you get the perfect playground for astronauts. And there's another similarity with Mars. In summer, it can seem as if the sun never sets in Iceland. Locals go shopping at 3 a.m. In June, for example, the night can last only 2 hours. Sounds like a perfect open-air party destination. Well, not really. Who would want to party at a freezing temperature of 42 degrees Fahrenheit? That's the average low air temperature in June. Future astronauts spent weeks in Iceland, trying to adjust to these strange conditions. This helps them prepare for the long days on Mars. This is not a figure of speech, since days on the Red Planet are longer than the ones on Earth by 40 minutes. That's not much, considering the length of days on other planets. On Jupiter, a day is over in just under 10 hours, while a day on Venus equals 243 Earth days. But let's first land on Mars and then think of other planets, shall we? Have you been doing some math in your head? If one day on Mars is 40 minutes longer than on Earth, then how long is a Martian year? Nope, I'm willing to bet your calculations aren't correct. You forgot to factor in an important detail. The planet is farther from the Sun than Earth. This means that a year on Mars lasts 687 days, nearly twice as long as a year on Earth. Sorry, future astronauts, you'll get a birthday cake once every 2 years. There's another minus to the Red Planet, literally. The planet's average temperature is minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Makes Iceland's climate feel like the tropics, huh? Despite these extreme weather conditions, scientists believe that water once flowed on Mars. And where there's water, there's life. That's why NASA scientists lowered the tiny rover in the middle of a crater that they suspected was once a lake. This is where it stands the greatest chance of finding evidence of life. What about life forms on Mars? Looks like it's not science fiction. The planet has polar caps like Earth, and that's not all. Scientists believe they've even detected snowfall on Mars. Its atmosphere is 100 times thinner than that of our planet. It isn't a breath of fresh air, but it isn't extremely inhospitable like other planets. On Venus, it rains acid, and the temperature is high enough to melt lead. And on Jupiter, there are gigantic storms that rage on for centuries. Makes you fall in love with the blue planet all over again. Even Iceland sounds fun at this point. You might even want to learn Icelandic. If you're successful, then you can even read Old Norse, the language of the Vikings. And you'll know 100 words for wind. This will come in handy as wind speeds on the island can reach up to 40 miles per hour. Out in the open, you have to hold on to a fence or a signpost to stay on your feet. Iceland's climate will make you think twice before moving there. But for astronauts preparing for another world, this place is perfect. Iceland is equally impressive underground. In fact, the island might hold the key to sustaining human life on Mars. The surface of this planet is not very hospitable. The soil is poisonous and abrasive. It can easily cut through an astronaut's suit. But underneath the ground, the living conditions are more tolerable. And Iceland has a real-life model of this potential underground dwelling: lava tubes. Long tunnels carved out by lava making its way to the surface. These maze-like corridors are perfect human habitats. And they're cost-efficient. Nature had already built them for us. Future astronauts can walk through similar lava tubes in Iceland. Who knows? One day their cautious steps might turn into giant leaps for mankind.
So, you're getting ready for your adventure in the land of ice and fire. But before you switch your phone to Volcano Explorer mode, hear me out. You need to pack properly to get the most out of your trip. Now, never underestimate the Icelandic weather. It doesn't matter if you're going there in May or January, you can expect all seasons in one trip or even one day. If you're going in summer, pack both light and warmer layers and some good hiking boots. You'll definitely need a waterproof and windproof outer layer. Don't be shy to bring an insulated winter jacket. It's always better to take them off than not have it and freeze. One more thing you need to know about the Icelandic summer is that between June 15th and June 30th, you can expect something known as the midnight sun. The sun doesn't set until after midnight, and even then, it barely goes below the horizon, so it looks more like the evening twilight. Unless your accommodation has extra dark and thick curtains, you might have trouble sleeping when it's so light outside. That's why it's a good idea to pack a sleeping mask. And for the daytime, you'll definitely need sunglasses and sunscreen. Or you could just pop by in December when it's only light for 4 hours and 7 minutes a day. Winter temperatures aren't as terrible as you might think, but the snow and wind coming from all directions make things worse. So focus on staying warm and dry. An insulated jacket, another warm layer or two, thermal pants, reflective waterproof pants to stay dry and noticeable in the snows, a good warm hat, and sturdy boots will literally take you a long way. Ice cleats as an add-on will help you stay stable on icy terrains. Spring and fall are pretty short, just like my dad, and the weather is also super unpredictable. So the same set of items you'd pack for winter will do. Even if you're going to Iceland in the coldest weather, definitely pack a swimsuit. Iceland's sea isn't the warmest in the world, but you'll need that swimsuit for outdoor pools and hot springs the country is full of. Since all the pools are heated with geothermal energy, they're always warm. The locals and tourists swim in all sorts of weather conditions. Yes, even in the snow. The Blue Lagoon is the most famous geothermal spa. It uses seawater coming from around 6,500 feet underground, and it comes with useful earth minerals. Once it gets heated up by a nearby geothermal plant, a mix of ocean and fresh water pours into a lava pool at a temperature of around 102 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets its postcard-worthy turquoise color from the silica in it, reflecting sunlight. Definitely bring a reusable water bottle for the trip. You can refill it with tap water since it's perfectly safe and healthy. The country is full of pure springs and glaciers, and that high-quality water goes to every tap. There are zero chemicals in it, so it's officially some of the clearest kinds of water in the world. All you have to do is wait a bit when you change from hot to cold water. Hot water also comes to Icelandic homes straight from the spring and is heated by geothermal sources. The sulfur in it makes it smell like rotten eggs. Although it's yucky, it's totally harmless. Bottled water is overpriced and it literally comes from the same tap. Icelanders will have no problem speaking and understanding English, but if you want to feel more like a local, you could bring translation earbuds. Icelandic is pretty difficult to grasp on the go and might sound unusual. The language has less than 500,000 native speakers, but they're super proud of it, and it keeps growing. Instead of borrowing words from other languages for new concepts, they create new words or repurpose some old ones. The Icelandic for computer, for instance, totally translates as the number oracle. There are over 130 ways of saying wind, and 112 of them are written on a wooden walkway from the calmest to the strongest wind, just in case you want to learn them. There are also some concepts the English language just doesn't have. For example, this window weather. It's the kind of weather that looks good from the inside, but once you step out, you regret your decision. Makes sense to me. In case, for some reason, you were planning to bring a horse to Iceland, stop right there. The Icelandic horse is one of the oldest and purebred horses in the world, with a history of the breed going back to the 10th century. The story goes that the ancestors of today's beauties were carefully selected to be brought to Iceland from Norway during the Viking years, and no one has imported any other horse breeds to Iceland since the 11th century. It is banned by law. This complete isolation helps the Icelandic horses stay super healthy and live a long life. These beauties used to be the only form of transportation in the country. They've adapted to survive in all kinds of weather conditions and have grown, although they still don't look huge. And when you see it, never call it a pony. It can offend the locals. Now, I don't want to be the one to tell you, but your wish won't come true just because you threw a coin in one of Iceland's thermal springs. The signs forbidding throwing coins are all over the place for a good reason. The coins keep hanging in crystal clear waters, ruining the natural look of geysers and pools. Plus, researchers have proved that coins and other trash can change the color of the thermal water for good. That's precisely what happened in Yellowstone. The Morning Glory pool changed its color from tropical blue to green with orange and yellow hues. If you don't want that to happen to the beautiful Icelandic landscapes, then keep the coins for souvenirs or in your pocket. Now, elves are a big deal in Iceland. About half of the population believes in their existence. The local folklore sees elves as the hidden people who live in the lava fields. When someone wants to build something in one of those, they have to take into account the elves' opinions. Yes, these guys have a spokesperson who comes to meetings. Sometimes road construction is even diverted around boulders where the elves live, so not to disturb them. These little guys go house hunting during the winter holiday season, and it is 13 elves called the Yule Lads who bring the young generation of Icelanders their gifts. If you want to learn more about the elves during your trip, you can sign up for Reykjavik's Elf School. You'll get textbooks, a legit elf diploma, and tea with cookies as a bonus. They might seem like a regular photo prop, but these little pyramids of rocks actually have a name and history. The humans of the past used to build cairns to be used as kind of a GPS system long before the concepts of cars and GPS was even created. Travelers mark certain spots along their routes to help other wanderers find the path. They used to be the only way of marking the routes, and you can still find them all over the island. Iceland, of course, has GPS now, but it's illegal to move rocks from the cairns because they're considered an important part of history. Plus, some hikers still use those pyramids for navigation. So, if you randomly build one of those, hikers can easily get lost as they'd follow the wrong route. Oops! Now, if you want to bring a good gift to your new Icelandic friends, a book is a great idea. For many years, the country had the highest rate of publishing books per capita in the world. On average, 1 out of 10 Icelanders publishes a book in their lifetime. There's even a special book-giving holiday. Icelandic sagas go back to the 13th century. Writers create their sagas even on napkins and coffee cups. Each geyser and waterfall has its own tale about heroes and heroines attached to it. You can also scan barcodes on public benches to listen to audiobooks on your smartphone. Cool. Alright, let's go on a world tour. I'll show you the most curious things internet users have found across the globe. Little things light up cultures like nothing else. Let's start in a wonderland world, Asia. First stop, India, the country that will soon surpass China and will become the most populated country in the world. This right here is a street where many training and coaching centers are located. Now, in some states of India, people still widely follow a sustainable tradition of serving meals on banana leaves. A kind Redditor shared what a typical meal looks like. Another user commented that it is also common across the world in Puerto Rico. This right here is a regular day in Sri Lanka fishing. Tic Tacs are so expensive in Sri Lanka that little packs of 8 pieces are a thing. In China, some malls have a husband storage. Women can leave their husbands there so that the boys can enjoy video games while their wives are shopping. It spares women from a lot of whining. Now this is a McDonald's located in an old newspaper stand. Even manholes are a work of art in Asia. Here's one example, a dragon art spotted by a user in Wuxi, China. Turns out, in China, eggs are sold in mesh bags. And of course, Asia has a bunch of snacks with unusual flavors. They even have cucumber-flavored chips. This guy went to get a coffee in Singapore and got it in a bag. Turns out it's quite common in Southeast Asia. Also, they take ice cream sandwiches there quite literally in Singapore. Thing is, they put ice cream between actual toasts. The Redditor confirms that it's weirdly delicious. Would you dare to try? Here's a first look at a city in Japan. A Redditor shared a beautiful photo made at night in Yokohama. Other internet users shared that they felt very safe there, even when walking at night. And this is a photo of a snowfall. I didn't know that in Japan they get that much snow. Turns out, many toilets there have sinks on top of them. The dirty water after you washed your hands is used to flush, which saves Japan millions of gallons of water. They also collect rainwater and then use it to wash the roads. The water in the street canal in Japan is so clean that fish swim there. In Japan, many manholes are beautifully ornated too, and several users shared some of them. These are Japanese rice fields, and this is one of the designs in their cans. A Redditor spotted a tiny house somewhere in Japan. I wish I could have had the tour. They have driverless KFC trucks roaming the street and selling you food. Turns out the Japanese don't have signatures. Instead, each person has a personal stamp that they use to sign documents. And this is a photo of a night bus. I wish every country's public transport was this cozy and comfortable. One Redditor went to see the White Temple in Thailand. You see, the buildings there are so stunning that even the toilet looks like this. This is a mobile 7-Eleven in Thailand. In Vietnam, tour guides can row with their feet only. This Redditor has proof. And now we're off to Australia. Some buses there have special stands for the passengers' surfboards. Since we like traffic lights today, I can't but show you this one. It features Mary Poppins, and it's installed in Queensland, the hometown of P.L. Travers, the author of Mary Poppins. The next country on today's tour is New Zealand. Look at this urban wonder, a new apartment building built over an older house. Also, the citizens of New Zealand enjoy a unique lemonade drink Coca-Cola produces just for them. What a VIP treatment! Now, let's move across the Pacific Ocean to North America. We start in the second biggest country in the world, Canada. One of the most common stereotypes about Canada is that they are very polite. Well, a Redditor posted a photo of a Canadian bus saying sorry for being full. Even the buses are polite there. Another user found an outdoor toilet, but of course dressed for cold weather. And one more user shared this photo. It was so windy in the town that the grass got blown off. As some Redditor commented, "I can't own anything. The wind tried stealing my grass." One more unusual occurrence, a Redditor shared a photo of a huge iceberg passing by. Now let's move to the US and start in the northern state, Alaska. These light pillars are reflections of the ice crystals in the sky. A resident of Alaska opened the front door after a snowstorm. Did you know that the US is the homeland of skyscrapers? Yep, the first skyscraper in the world was built in 1885 in Chicago. The home insurance building had 10 stories. Now, it's not even close to a skyscraper, but that was the start. And look what this Redditor found in Seattle. It's not unfinished work, it's a skyscraper built on top of an 11-story pedestal called Rainier Tower. This is an abandoned diner somewhere in the California desert. Here's another interesting photo from a Redditor. A Mexican restaurant moved to a building where KFC had been. Instead of removing the logo, they just added a sombrero, a mustache, and a poncho. I say, genius. Since we talked about Mexico, let's move there. One user shared a pack of toast bread without any crusts, and another Redditor showed that potato chips go with a small packet of salsa there. Here's a Mexican crosswalk. The man on it has a dog and a hat. And this user shared photos of how his grandma hand-painted a toilet in Mexico. And this toilet brush holder gives me chills. Mexico is a whole different world. Cenotes are caused by erosion in the limestone bedrock, and they hold ground and rainwater. But this Redditor probably didn't expect to see this wonder right by a Costco store. The award for the stadium with the most mesmerizing view probably goes to this one. Turns out, the Bahamas are home to the biggest underwater statue in the world, which is called Ocean Atlas. Here's a photo from a Redditor. It's magnificent. You can even see a woman sitting on its hand for comparison. And here's a curiosity from Belize. Apparently, they sell bagged drinking water there. It's very common in Central and South America. And this user met a grasshopper in Costa Rica. The hand is for comparison. Now, I have a question. What do Costa Rica and Australia have in common? Central America is hot. The average annual temperature there is 81 degrees Fahrenheit. No wonder this taxi in Panama only has controls for cold air. Okay, let's say bye to Central America and see what South America has in store for us. And the first store is in Colombia. A Redditor shared that in Bogota, people are paid for dressing as traffic cones and shaming drivers for parking on the street, which makes them move somewhere else. Having a stroll down the stairs of Brazil doesn't seem easy. You can run into trees like this one. Asia is well known for crazy chocolate flavors, but look what this Redditor found in Brazil. Snickers bars with coconut flavors, passion fruit, and even caramel and bacon. Here's a 20 peso bill from Argentina. It has guanaco on it. We still have to move across the Atlantic and visit Europe and Africa.
Let me continue my world tour, and now we're heading straight to Europe. Let's start our journey in Greece, a place with thousands of years of history. Even in modern days, there are still ancient ruins there that are being carefully preserved, and it's an interesting ride. The airport of Athens has a built-in museum with ancient artifacts. And here's how ancient and modern coexist there. Here's the view of the Acropolis from the street. A Spartan roaming the streets of Greece. A Redditor shared a photo of a modern building built right over the ancient ruins. The visitors can see the ruins through the glass. Greece is also very well known for its cats roaming the streets everywhere. This Redditor spotted a cat guarding the National Bank of Greece. These days, everyone is trying to reduce the usage of plastic. Some use paper straws and some go with glass straws. But this cafe in Greece offered to use macaroni as straws. I'm not sure if it's stupid or genius. Another user went to a restaurant in North Macedonia and got baffled when they served slices of pizza on waffles. Double win, a snack, and no waste. In Romania, vending machines seem to be a thing. This one, for example, is a machine with ham. And here's a better one, a vending machine selling cartons of eggs. Scrambled eggs, probably. Europe is a place where old neighbors are modern, and this combination is mesmerizing. I'll show you.
This Redditor shared a photo of a modern basketball court squeezed between 700-year-old walls in Croatia. And here's a photo from inside a grocery store. Look at these old columns. Modern problems require modern solutions. These traffic lights light up the ground so that people who store their phones could notice when the light changes. Italy is a work of art with thousands of years of history. I have quite a bunch of stuff for you from there. Some ruins date back thousands of years, and a lot of that gets preserved. A Redditor shared a photo of a lobby of a hotel that has a glass floor so that the ruins were visible. And these are the railing in an Airbnb. Even street signs are a work of art in Italy. Look at this one. Another Redditor shared even more designs. This Redditor showed a photo of a supermarket that is located in an old theater in Venice. Another user added one more photo of that supermarket. Since we're talking about supermarkets, apparently, pets are allowed there. There are even special carts to carry them. Cities are centuries old, and there are quite a few narrow streets, so post vehicles have to adjust to fit them. Here's one of them. Some cities have canals or are located on islands, so boats are a thing. This is a UPS boat at Murano Island. Europe is packed with countries. The city of Basel in Switzerland is located right on the border with France and Germany, so the airport has 3 exits. You can walk out of it to France, Germany, or Switzerland. Let's walk out in Germany. Look, there's a traffic light with a girl walking a camel. The reasons are a mystery to me because camels aren't really a German thing, but it's cute. Here's another unique streetlight featuring Karl Marx, a famous German philosopher. Back to baffling vending machines. In Germany, you can find vending machines with sausages. Hamburg is Germany's major port city. There's a river that connects it to the North Sea. No wonder there's a drive-through McDonald's for a boat. Look at this design of mineral water that is being sold in the Swiss Alps. A Redditor brought a souvenir from France. These are baguette-shaped pens. Look at this narrow house in Spain. I wonder what it looks like inside, but unfortunately, the Redditor only shared the exterior. In Portugal, cell phone towers are disguised as trees. And this is a bus that can ride the roads and then turn into a boat. A Redditor spotted doors in London that have doorknobs in the center. This seems super inconvenient, but apparently the handle doesn't turn and exists only to pull the door closed. And the metal part with the keyhole has a little handle on the bottom of it. Europe is a historical place. This post box bears the mark of a king ruling over a century ago. Back in the day, red telephone boxes were in high demand. Nowadays, when every person has a cell phone or 2, not so much. So telephone boxes are being used in different ways. This one, for example, is now a smartphone repair shop. Luxembourg is a small but rich country squeezed between France, Germany, and Belgium, and they have baguette vending machines. Let's move north first, to the Netherlands. Farmers border their fields with a strip of flowers and put up a sign with a QR code, where people can pay for picking the flowers. And here's just a weird installation spotted by some Redditor. In Denmark, in Aarhus, a city founded by the Vikings in the 8th century, you can find traffic lights with Vikings pictured on them. Some trash cans in Swedish subways have a separate space for cans. Homeless people can pick them up and exchange the cans for some cash. There's a giant statue of a silver moose in Norway. And these are signs on bathroom stalls depicting reindeer. Apparently, Finnish people are as polite as Canadians. On the bus, they have a button to thank the bus driver. Also, a Redditor spotted a raccoon pattern on a bus seat. We all know rocking horses. Most of you probably had one in your early days. Well, Finnish little people have rocking moose. Many people come to Iceland hoping to see the northern lights. A Redditor had a phone in the hotel which had a special button to wake the guest up when the northern lights appear. Lithuanians sometimes put fake police cars on the sides of the road to combat road speeding. Europe has been ruled by kings and queens for centuries. Even today, many countries like the UK, the Netherlands, Spain, Denmark, Belgium, and some other countries have monarchs. So, no wonder that there are hundreds of castles scattered across Europe. Poland doesn't have any monarchs these days, but it still has 500 castles. Here's a warning sign for ghosts next to one of them. In Wrocław, all landmarks have a model so that visually impaired people could touch and see them too. There's also a statue of Darth Vader in one Polish city. In reality, it's a statue of a Polish magnate who supervised the construction of a port. But from time to time, locals dress the statue in Lord Vader's costume. This sign in Poland specifically prohibits bikes, tractors, and horses to go on a highway. In some places, there's a separate line on the sidewalk for people who are walking and staring at their phones. And now we travel across the Atlantic to Africa. This is Dune 7 in Namibia, the 7th biggest dune in the world. It's as tall as the Empire State Building. An internet user shared this photo. Someone in Tanzania put a literal penthouse on top of the building. I did some research and found out that it's a hotel. Still doesn't explain the roof, but I'm totally buying it. Maybe it's marketing. Drivers in Mozambique should be careful and watch out for elephants. And this is a sign from South Africa. Watch out for penguins. And another one that asks to baboon-proof the trash bins. So baboons are the raccoons of South Africa. Trees growing through the roads aren't surprising anymore, but this is a palm tree in Morocco growing through multiple balconies. A Redditor shared a photo of a runaway horse in Israel returning to the backyard in an urban area. Urban horse encounters are relatively common in the country. A hotel in Turkey served a whole honeycomb for breakfast to this Redditor. People living in Hawaii need to make at least twice the average salary in the rest of the US to live comfortably. Those who aren't ready to pay $5 for a gallon of milk have to look for happiness elsewhere. And year after year, the state makes it to the top lines of the population loss rating. While the local middle class is leaving, Hawaii is turning into a heaven for billionaires. Just 37 of them already own 11% of all the private land in the Aloha state. Larry Ellison, co-founder of the Oracle Corporation, bought 98% of the island of Lanai, including the grocery store, the only gas station, and the community newspaper, all for a nifty sum of $300 million. This makes him the boss and landlord of everyone on the island. Mark Zuckerberg, the Meta founder and CEO, is building a huge compound on Kauai with more than a dozen buildings, at least 30 bedrooms and bathrooms, a tunnel leading to a 5,000 square feet underground bunker, and 11 tree houses connected by intricate rope bridges. The local residents with ancestral rights to this land lost in court and had to put it up for auction. The Malaysian tycoon Kvek Leng Khan owns a third of the island of Molokai through his business empire. Of course, these and some of the world's richest people create new jobs and invest in development projects on the islands. But still, nearly 2/3 of the locals believe that their state is being run for tourists at the expense of the residents. A lot of famous people like to live in Wailea and Makina in Maui because it's peaceful and gives them the privacy they want. Oprah Winfrey has a big house up in the local hills. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, reportedly bought a huge house by La Perouse Bay for $78 million. Other famous people who live in Maui include Clint Eastwood, Mick Fleetwood, Jim Carrey, and Alice Cooper. When you visit Maui, you can see a special Hall of Fame display at the airport showing those celebrities. It's supposed to celebrate their ties with the island, but the local people feel like it only highlights the huge gap between the new super wealthy residents and the local people who can barely afford to live there. As the rich and famous keep buying property across Hawaii, home prices continue to rise. It's more expensive to buy a house here than in Washington, D.C. or California. Part of the reason for such high pricing is how the land itself is formed. Hawaii is bigger than most people think, but it's made up of lots of separate islands that are spread far apart. Even though the islands are big, not all of the land can be used to build houses or neighborhoods. Unlike most of the US, which has a lot of flat land and gentle hills, much of Hawaii is made up of steep, rocky mountains and rough terrain. This kind of land is very hard to build on or live on. Because of this, most of the people on Hawaii, about 1 million of them, live on the island called Oahu. The other islands, like the Big Island, have far fewer people. There isn't enough land for everyone, and that makes it hard for people who have lived in Hawaii their whole lives to afford a place to live. Tourism makes up 21% of the state's economy. Most of the visitors come from the United States and Japan. Tourists bring in tons of money, but there's a problem. Depending too much on tourism can be risky for Hawaii. In the recent years, because of we all know what happened, a health rule called the Conditional Sail Order stopped cruise ships from coming to Hawaii for health safety reasons. Many other tourist activities, like visiting beaches or attending events, were also shut down. With fewer visitors, Hawaii earned a lot less money, which hurt the economy. To avoid this problem in the future, Hawaii has been trying to make money in other ways besides tourism. One idea is to invest more in fishing, but this hasn't been easy. At some point, there was too much fishing going on here, and now Hawaii has to bring in 63% of its seafood from other places instead of catching it nearby. There are farms here that grow pineapples, macadamia nuts, coffee, and produce milk. But now, farming isn't as important as it was 100 years ago. Probably one of the reasons is that it's more profitable to sell the land for houses or hotels than to use it for farming. This change made Hawaii even more dependent on tourism and made living in the Aloha State so very pricey. Honolulu is reported to be the 7th most expensive city to live in the US. A family of 4 spends around $8,000 a month here, and a single adult will have to pay, on average, $2,500. Food alone costs around $500 a person for 1 month. Most of the food in Hawaii, about 85 to 90%, comes from faraway places. Since it has to travel more than 2,500 miles to get there, around 1/3 of all the food spoils along the way, especially because Hawaii is warm and humid. This waste makes things more expensive because stores know they'll lose some of their products and charge more to cover their losses. There aren't as many stores competing with each other. If stores don't compete, they have no reason to lower their prices. On top of that, they have to pay a lot for things like rent and electricity, so they raise their prices to make up for those costs. Speaking of electricity, an average bill is around $200, which is almost 90% higher than the national average. Yep, the Aloha State has the highest energy costs in the country. And perhaps that's why people in Hawaii use the least amount of electricity compared to other states. But their bills are still much higher. The main reason is the price per unit of electricity, called a kilowatt hour. 1 unit of electricity costs almost 40 cents. To compare, Utah has the cheapest rate at just 10.91 cents. It's so expensive in Hawaii because most of the electricity comes from oil, and that oil has to be shipped to the islands. Since Hawaii depends so much on oil, energy costs go up and down with oil prices. On top of all that, the income tax is some of the highest in the country. A quarter of all households in Hawaii spent more than their income in 2024. To survive, people used savings and credit cards and cut expenses. They also had to work more hours or get an extra job. They were forced to sell their belongings and borrow money from relatives, banks, or other lenders. Almost half of residents are in the category called Alice, and it has nothing to do with Alice in Wonderland. It means asset-limited, income-constrained, employed. More than 1 in 3 residents lives below the Alice annual income threshold. And then there's also legislation that further complicates things for Hawaii. It says that any goods shipped between places in the US must be carried on ships that are owned, built, and run by Americans. This makes shipping much more expensive because US ships and crews cost a lot more than ships from other countries. Most of the world's ships don't follow these rules because they're registered in countries like Panama. Because of this, Hawaii can still get goods from places like East Asia using cheaper ships, but if they want something from the mainland US, it costs way more money. In fact, this law costs Hawaii over $1 billion every year. This law also makes it really hard for Hawaii to grow businesses because everything is so expensive. The cost of insurance is also going up. This is because the islands are hit by natural disasters like hurricanes and storms more often now. All of this adds up to making life in Hawaii even more expensive. But even despite all that, the state steadily lands high in studies on well-being. Even people who can barely afford a living are mostly happier, or at least less unhappy in Hawaii than in other states. I guess the strong community support, a clean and fantastically beautiful environment, and the ability to have beach parties all year round make up for many hardships.